Welcome to the October 27th, 2020 Planning Commission meeting. We continue to operate in a virtual environment, and we will likely do so through the fall. I would like to ask for your patience as we use this platform for public meetings. There may be slight delays as we transition between speakers, presentations, and participants. If any participants have issues with technology, please send a message to the moderator. We have 7 items on our agenda today and a committee report. All of these items will have staff presentations and a full discussion. I would ask that the commission members focus comments on questions on the identified outstanding issues for each request. I would ask that commissioners to hold all questions until the conclusion of all presentations and any public comment. I would also ask each commissioner to be recognized by the chairperson before speaking. With 7 discussion items on the agenda today, I'd ask that everybody be efficient with our time so we can discuss all items. The first item on our agenda is public comment. This is an opportunity for persons to speak on an item that does not appear on the agenda. There are 6 persons signed up to speak this morning. Each speaker will have 3 minutes to make comments, and I would ask that, so we have 2 committee reports following public comment. One is from Text Change Committee, the other is from Committee of the Whole, and typically we do not receive public comments for committee reports, so I would ask that anybody here to speak for public comment limit their comments to items that are not included either on the agenda or as part of the committee report. And with that, I would ask the moderator to call each name.
All right, we have Chuck Valdez signed up.
Oh, hi. I was a little confused on the format here, but we just wanted to say thank you for CP 220 affirmation of item 1, option 4, item 2, option 1, and we also have a petition for the property owners forthcoming just to monument our position, but we appreciate your votes on Thursday.
Thank you very much.
And we also have Amy Bush.
Good morning. I am seconding what Chuck Valdez just said. Thank you very much. We appreciate your hard work and time. Thank you.
Thank you.
That's all I have of who signed up that wanted to speak.
Okay, great. Thank you very much. Hold on 1 second. I'm having a little technical difficulty here. Bear with me. Okay. So the next on the agenda is the committee report. There were 2 committees that met last week, the Text Change Committee and the Committee of the Whole. I would like to take each committee separately and hear a report from each chairperson of the committee. And we will start with the Text Change Committee, which discussed 3 city-initiated text changes. The committee recommends approval of the 2 text changes for TC 420 infill and setback and TC 1020 text change process. I'd ask the chairperson, CJ Mann, if you would like to make a report or offer comments.
Yes, Tika, as you stated, we talked about 3 text change cases last week. The first being TC 420, infill setbacks and height. After I give this small report on this case, I would like to see if staff has anything to add, because I know there was a question regarding the images or diagram surrounding those text changes. So I'd like to see if staff had that ready for us. But in summary, text change TC 420 amends the Part 10 Raleigh UDO ordinance to modify how average grade and building heights are determined. The applicability in residential infill capacity and setback standards and how wall side plane height and setbacks are determined. Along with that, that text change, again, there was a diagram or image that we looked at and we voted, or we made a motion unanimously to pass TC 420. The next case that we talked about was TC 820 short-term rentals. That case we deferred. We held it at the table because we wanted to get more information from city staff regarding how other cities are looking at short-term rentals, because it does have a long-term impact on our city. And then the third case that we looked at was TC 1020, and that deals with the authorization process for UDO text changes. And in summary, that adoption of the ordinance will simplify the process for text changes to the UDO and allow for staff to review prior to the city council. It will also simplify the process for text changes to zoning conditions by allowing submitting as a rezoning. Text changes to the UDO will now be heard according to this text change and authorized by the city council as a special team. I'm sorry, I'm having technical difficulties. Text changes to the zoning conditions will also be processed in the same manner as rezonings based off of this text change. So we also move to approve text change TC 420 unanimously. So at this time, I'd just like to see if staff has anything to add on TC 420, because I know there were some not outstanding issues, but some issues that we wanted to present to the table today.
McDonald. I'm representing the case on behalf of Justin Romero. I was just going to provide one piece of information that I think came out of the text change committee in terms of modifications to the actual ordinance. And that was to actually the first section dealing with building height and how average grade is determined. There was a question, I believe, from one of the committee members asking what to do in the instance of multiple primary streets. And so some language was added to clarify how building height would be assessed in the event that there are multiple primary streets. And it's my understanding that the conclusion reached by the committee was that building height would have to be met on both primary streets, primary street elevations independently of one another in such instances. But that's the main change that I know came out of the committee. I think there were also some backup materials related to the infill study that was conducted about a year ago and the survey that was also conducted. And so those materials were included as well. I'm happy to answer try to answer any other specific questions if there are any from the commission at this time.
I don't see any. Thank you. Okay. So seeing no further questions, I would entertain a motion. Or without, or I'll go ahead. Yep. I move to recommend approval of these text changes. Do I have a second? Commissioner Miller.
Second.
Thank you. So
I apologize. We need to have the consistency statement with each, and so sorry if you could address whether the text change is consistent with the comprehensive plan and in the public interest. I think you can make a motion to approve both at the same time. It's better separated, but however you want to proceed, but you would need to address comp plan consistency and whether or not it's in the public interest for both.
thank you. So I move to approve text change TC 420 infill and setback because it is in the public interest and sorry, I'm drawing a blank here, and is aligns with the comprehensive plan. Do I need any more specificity than that? Okay, thank you. So there's a motion and seconded by Commissioner Miller. And I would ask Shanitha for a roll call of members to record the individual votes. And at the end of the roll call, I will announce the outcome of the vote.
Thank you. And this is specifically for TC4?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, thank you. Commissioner Bennett, how do you vote?
Aye.
Commissioner Fox?
Aye.
Commissioner Hicks?
Aye.
Commissioner Lampman?
Aye.
Commissioner Mann?
Aye.
Commissioner McIntosh?
Aye.
Commissioner Miller?
Aye.
And Commissioner Winters?
Aye.
The vote is unanimous and it passes. The next motion, I move to approve text change TC 1020, text change process. The proposed text change is consistent with the relevant policies in the comprehensive plan, and approval of this proposed text change amendment is reasonable and in the public interest. Do I have a second? Commissioner Lampman.
Second.
Thank you. So there's a motion and a second by Commissioner Lampman. I would ask Shanitha for a roll call of members to record individual votes. And at the end of the roll call, I will announce the outcome of the vote.
Commissioner Bennett, how do you vote?
Aye.
Commissioner Fox?
Aye.
Commissioner Hicks?
Aye.
Commissioner Lampman?
Aye.
Commissioner Mann?
Aye.
Commissioner McIntosh?
Aye.
Commissioner Miller?
Aye.
Commissioner Winters?
Aye.
The vote is unanimous and it passes. Thank you. The next item is the Committee of the Whole report. The Committee of the Whole also met twice last week, and the committee recommends approval of the Midtown Area Plan and associated comprehensive plan amendments. Because of the timing of the meetings and the agenda publication, Midtown Plan CP 220 was not listed under the committee reports. However, we have reached our deadline to deliver a recommendation to the City Council. You should have received some material from staff that contains the recommendations of the Committee of the Whole. There are some members of the public on the call this morning who attended and spoke at the Committee of the Whole meeting on Thursday evening. And we typically do not entertain comments during the committee report, as I stated previously. So with that, I would like to entertain a motion to recommend approval of CP 220 with the recommendations listed in the staff materials. Commissioner Bennett. Oh, we lost you.
Sorry, pressing the wrong buttons. I was just going to ask, since the memo wasn't published on board docs, can we just go over what the changes were for the people on the phone so they can be assured that we are approving with the revisions that we recommended last week?
Okay, I would ask for staff to, could staff do that for us?
Yes, I can go through that. This is Jason Harden.
Thank you.
So committee did make a number of recommendations. I'm going to just work through those quickly. And for those of you who were at the meeting of the Committee of the Whole last week, these are the same recommendations, obviously, that the committee made. So there were 12 different comments that were worked through and recommendations for each. So the first was the future land use map in the St. Albans Bush area. And the committee recommended option 4, which is retaining that existing business and commercial services designation. Number 2 was height in that same area. The recommendation was to keep the plan recommendation of 5 and 4 stories. Number 3 is height in the Six Forks area, just north of the Beltline. The recommendation was option 1, which is retaining the plan recommendation for 20-story height guidance with transitions down to 4 stories. Number 4, same area and the consideration of frontage and urban form. The recommendation was option 1, retaining the plan recommendation for an urban frontage in that area. Number 5, height in the Six Forks Road, Wake Forest Road area. The recommendation there was option 1, allowing existing future land use map-based height guidance of 5 and 4 stories to remain. Also to revise the future land use map designation on properties at the southwest corner, that should say southeast corner, of Six Forks Road and Anderson Drive to office and residential mixed use to match the existing zoning of properties there. Number 6, the waterfront district height at Atlantic Avenue. That was option 1, revising the plan recommendation to allow existing future land use map based height guidance of up to 12 stories to remain. Number 7, urban form in the waterfront district, option 1, retaining the plan recommendation of no parking between the building and the street. Number 8, waterfront district future land use map south of Six Forks. That was the recommendations option 1, revising the plan recommendation to retain the existing community mixed use designation. Number 9, the street plan in the waterfront district south of Six Forks. That was option 2, revising the plan recommendation to remove streets in the area bounded by Six Forks, Industrial, Creekside Drive, and Wake Forest Road from the street plan recommendation. Number 10, waterfront district future land use map. This was not currently part of the plan recommendation, and the option here was option 1, revising the plan recommendation to add a different designation to this area of community mixed use to the future land use map. Number 11, same area, option 2, revising the plan recommendation to support up to 20 stories. And finally, number 12, the street plan in that same area, option 1, revising the plan recommendation to accept the modified proposal, but retain a connection to the future Creekside Drive extension. So those were the items that the committee made recommendations on. There was one more item, which was to potentially add a recommendation for future study of the area near a potential commuter rail station in the Atlantic Six Forks area. There was not a quorum on that item. That's something that the Planning Commission could consider as part of any motion here today. And that would simply be for future study.
Thank you. Commissioner Lampman.
Just to ask about item 13, would we see that one again, or would it go straight to council because of the timing?
That recommendation would go to council along with the other recommendation.
Okay. Do we need to vote on that one separate from the whole, or can we include it in the whole package?
I believe that would be better separately.
Okay.
So we would be entertaining 2 motions then, is that correct? Okay.
David, you're going to weigh in if it is simpler to handle those in one motion.
I think we have if you handle that as a separate recommendation for study, not a part of the comprehensive plan amendment, then you avoid a member having to recuse themselves from voting on the recommendation of the comprehensive plan. As I recall, there's a member who will need to recuse themselves from the recommendation of a study. Mm-hmm. So you can handle it either way, but if the study is included in the comp plan recommendation, you'd have a member who would need to recuse themselves.
That member is not here today, so I think that it would be fine. The only other thought that I have is because this was a last minute add, we didn't see it all the way through. I just want to be cautious of setting a precedent if things are going to be added at the last minute before we vote on them. I just think we'd like to be able to have time to review everything over the same duration. This one's not a big deal, but I just wanted to point it out.
Thank you. Commissioner Fox?
I would need to recuse myself from a vote on item number 13.
Okay, thank you. Well, at this time, I'd like to entertain a motion for items 1 through 12. Commissioner Fox?
Motion to approve comprehensive plan amendment CP 220 with the revisions as described by staff for items 1 through 12, as it is reasonable and in the public interest and consistent with the major themes of the comprehensive plan, including economic prosperity and equity, expanding housing choices, managing our growth, coordinating land use and transportation, sustainable development, and growing successful neighborhoods and communities.
Thank you. Is there a second? Commissioner Lampman?
Second.
So Commissioner Fox has offered a motion to approve and Commissioner Lampman has seconded the motion. I will ask Shanitha for a roll call of members to record individual votes, and at the end of the roll call, I will announce the outcome.
Commissioner Bennett, how do you vote?
Aye.
Commissioner Fox?
Aye.
Commissioner Hicks?
Aye.
Commissioner Lampman?
Aye.
Commissioner Mann?
Aye.
Commissioner McIntosh?
Aye.
Commissioner Miller?
Aye.
Commissioner Winters?
Aye.
Okay, the motion is unanimous and it passes. Thank you. So now we'll entertain a motion for item number 13. All right, well, I'll give it a shot. I move to, I guess I move denial of item number 13 with the recommendation for further study. I might need some help here. Commissioner Lampman.
I just have a question about denial. Didn't know, because this is just recommending a study, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
So maybe the motion needs to be different, but since it's on the table,
Sure.
I guess I would ask if there's a second. Seeing none, the motion fails. Oh, could we entertain another motion? Commissioner Lampman.
Okay. I don't think that's me.
Oh, I'll turn my speaker off to see if that helps.
Okay. I vote to approve item number 13, which is a recommendation for a future study near the potential commuter rail and station at Atlantic and Six Forks area as part of CP 2-20 because it's reasonable and in the public interest because it provides understanding of transportation in the area.
Commissioner McIntosh.
Second.
All right, Commissioner Lampman has made a motion and Commissioner McIntosh has seconded. So now I would ask for Shanitha for a roll call of members to record individual votes. And at the end of the roll call, I will announce the outcome of the vote.
Commissioner Bennett, how do you vote?
Aye.
Commissioner Fox? I'm sorry, she recused. I'm sorry. Commissioner Hicks?
Aye.
Commissioner Lampman?
Aye.
Commissioner Mann?
Aye.
Commissioner McIntosh?
Aye.
Commissioner Miller?
Aye.
Commissioner Winters?
Aye.
Okay, the vote is unanimous and it passes. Now we move on to the consent agenda. The consent agenda is a list of requests that can be acted upon in one motion. There are 5 items on the consent agenda, 4 zoning cases, and 1 staff-initiated comprehensive plan amendment related to equitable development area transit. The 4 zoning cases appear to satisfy timing requirements. The comprehensive plan amendment would be automatically referred to the committee of the whole. And to be clear, the commission is not voting on the final disposition of the applications. It's simply deferring discussion to a future agenda. And with that, I would ask for a motion to approve the items on the consent agenda. Commissioner Lampman.
I vote to approve the items of the consent agenda.
All right. Do we have a second? I'll second it. So Commissioner Lampman has offered a motion to approve and Commissioner Hicks has seconded the motion. I will ask Shanitha for a roll call of members to record individual votes. And at the end of the roll call, I will announce the outcome of the vote.
Commissioner Bennett, how do you vote?
Aye.
Commissioner Fox?
Aye.
Commissioner Hicks?
Aye.
Commissioner Lampman?
Aye.
Commissioner Mann?
Aye.
Commissioner McIntosh?
Aye.
Commissioner Miller?
Aye.
And Commissioner Winters?
Aye.
So the motion to approve the consent agenda passes and it is unanimous. Thank you. We will now begin the old business portion of the agenda. These are requests that have appeared on a previous Planning Commission agenda. The first item is case number Z 2020. This is a request to rezone approximately 18 acres of land from conservation management with special residential parking overlay district to residential 10 conditional use. The overlay district would remain. This item previously appeared on the October 13th agenda and was deferred to today's agenda without discussion. This will be the first time that the request is discussed. So we will hear from staff, a staff presentation, the applicant presentation, as well as from the public. Hannah Reckow will provide a presentation on behalf of city staff.
Good morning.
Good morning.
As the chair mentioned, this is request Z 2020, a request to rezone about 17.88 acres from conservation management to R10 CU. There's also a special residential parking overlay district that would remain. The deadline for planning commission action is December 7th. In the next slide, you can see some of the surrounding zoning. Much of it is also conservation management and residential zoning, including some R10 districts. The closest mixed use zoning is north along Avon Ferry Road. Go to the next slide, see the context. So this is southwest downtown in between Lake Johnson and Lake Wheeler. There's, as I mentioned, so commercial uses north at the intersection of Gorman Street and Avon Ferry Road, and then pockets of undeveloped forested area and residential uses surrounding to the north, west, east, and south. There are some views from the site. The property has quite a long frontage along Gorman Street, and the property is undeveloped right now and forested. You can see. There are 7 conditions, the last 3 of which have been amended or added since this case was last seen. So the first condition prohibits some land uses that are normally permitted in an R10 district. Conditions 2, 3, and 4 all establish areas where development could not happen. So we go back to the slide again, just to go over that, and we'll look at the exhibits as well. But condition 2 establishes 3 protected areas where no development would happen. Condition 3 specifies no added fill in the 100-year floodplain, and then condition 4 identifies wetlands where no development would happen. Condition 5 has been amended since the last time this case was before you. It caps total number of residential units down to 35. It used to be 100. And then conditions 6 and 7 are new. Condition 6 prohibits the apartment building type, and condition 7 establishes a 32-foot building and parking setback from Gorman Street. So as I mentioned, there are 2 exhibits associated with these conditions. This may be a little difficult to see, but the exhibit A identifies the wetlands that were protected. So these are the areas in the north and west of the property that are outlined in brown. And then the next exhibit, exhibit B, shows the protected areas referenced in condition 2. Those are shaded green, and they're in the north, also west, and then a larger portion of the property to the south. Next slide. So existing versus proposed zoning. Existing zoning, conservation management permits very little development. It would not permit any residential units. So R10 normally has a density cap of 10 units per acre. The conditions limit that down to 35 units, which comes just under 2 units per acre. And then there are different setbacks. The conditions, again, establish a larger front setback. And I'll note that these side and rear setbacks with the protected areas that the other conditions reference would likely not be able to be met. Next. So the rezoning site is designated as private open space on the future land use map. This is a designation that envisions the area remaining as open space, so the request for R10 CU is inconsistent with that designation. Approval of this would amend the future land use map to low density residential. There is a urban form designation on Gorman Street of a transit emphasis corridor. That would normally recommend a frontage. The request is for a residential district, and frontage cannot be applied to residential district, so the request is neither consistent nor inconsistent with that designation. So overall, the request is consistent with the comprehensive plan. It is inconsistent with the future land use map, neither consistent nor inconsistent with the urban form map. There are a handful of consistent policies, include increasing entitlement for housing, keeping development out of the floodplain, and preserving open space and new development in larger lots. And then inconsistent policies identified are, again, the future land use map designation. There are no outstanding issues on this case, and again, the deadline for action is December 7th.
Thank you. David Brown will now present on behalf of the applicant. And as a reminder, the applicant and all of those who are in support have 10 minutes to speak.
Good morning, Vice Chair Hicks, members of the Planning Commission. This is David Brown. I'm a landscape architect and land planner. We appreciate the opportunity to discuss this case with you this morning. I'll ask if we can go to slide number 6 of our presentation. And while that is queuing up, I have a couple of opening remarks. As Hannah has done an excellent job outlining the case, I want to just hit a couple of key items. Talk about the location of this property. It is located on a transit emphasis corridor, which is served by both Raleigh and NCSU Transit. It is walkable to the shopping center, the growth center at the intersection of Avent Ferry and Gorman. It is also walkable and adjacent to the employment center at NCSU Centennial Campus. And while we acknowledge that our request is inconsistent with the future land use map, we do want to emphasize that the report states that it is overall consistent with the themes of the comprehensive plan and is compatible with adjoining properties. The genesis for this request is the fact that, in our opinion, and I think if you read reports in our media, there is a housing shortage in Raleigh. There is a small also housing options in this part of Raleigh, predominantly multifamily. And we believe that there is a reasonable use of this land that also protects those very sensitive environmental areas that are outlined here on the slide in front of you. The jurisdictional wetlands have been mapped. They're outlined in the pink color at the very north of the site and on the western boundary. You'll also notice that there are 3 stream buffers, A, B, and C. Those areas of those buffers and the interstitial spaces between them are part of our protected area. The jurisdictional wetlands also contain floodplain, and we are, by condition, saying we are staying out of those. In my experience working in Raleigh for decades, these conditions are far above the code standards. And I want to also talk a little bit about the housing choices. We are limiting that to the single family detached, the duplex attached, the townhome, and the cottage court. Apartments are prohibited. One other item is that by selecting R10 as our proposed zoning, we are also leaving intact the 50-foot average tree conservation buffer along Gorman Street. Obviously, that is subject to verifying that it meets the city's criteria for a treat area. Having walked that and worked on dozens of tree conservation areas, I believe most of that will qualify. Next slide, please. This graphic you saw briefly, but it underscores where our protected areas are. The boundaries are formed by the 100-year floodplain, which we are staying out of. The northern buffer for stream C, which also encapsulates stream B and A and the spaces between them. Let's go to the next slide, please. Very simple graphic. There's some high and dry land. If you look at the area in orange, you see a lot of topographic relief. That is where we're proposing to limit the development. You see the green band along Gorman Street, and of course the protected areas we mentioned earlier. Next slide, please. Very simple graphic showing the 2 pods of development on either side of stream D. We do believe that if this case were to be approved and a development plan brought forward, it is likely that stream B would need to provide a vehicular and pedestrian crossing to limit the amount of driveway access onto Gorman Street. With that, I'm going to wrap up for a few minutes, see if you have any questions, see if I can offer any other information.
Thank you, Mr. Brown. Next, I'd like to hear from those who are signed up to speak on this matter. I believe we have 2 persons signed up to speak. Each speaker will have 2 minutes to speak. The first person that I have is Tom Quack. Yes, hello?
Yeah, good morning. Can you hear me okay?
I can hear you. Good morning.
Thank you. My name is Tom Kwok, and I live at 1333 Trailwood Drive. Are you getting an echo from me?
Just a little bit, yes.
I have no real way to control that I know of.
Go ahead. I think it's okay.
Okay. I represent the Trailwood community. We're 50 households across the street from the development. And we understand that Raleigh needs more housing, and we support development, but we support it in the proper location. This is the wrong location. It's probably the worst possible site to plan any housing density. It was zoned conservation management over 50 years ago. The assessed land value is about $70,000. That's $4,000 an acre. And the taxes are $683 per year because the land has no development potential. The proposed development will destroy a fragile, old-growth hardwood forested ecosystem and wetlands. The upland is very high gradient, erodible topography, and the lowland is protected wetlands and vegetated riparian buffer on Walnut Creek and its tributaries. The proposal will result in issues with peak stormwater, sedimentation into the creek, chemical pollution. It'll degrade Walnut Creek and downstream Lake Raleigh. It'll exacerbate flooding on Avent Ferry Road and Trailwood Drive and degrade a premier city greenway. It's mostly surrounded by other conservation management land. It's inconsistent with the future land use map, which is private open space. And this was proposed 5 years ago, and I spoke at that meeting of the Planning Commission, and the Planning Commission voted unanimously to deny the approval of developing this property. If you approve that today, this will be precedent setting that we in Raleigh are willing to protect no land at all if we won't protect this parcel. Our community, the Trailwood Drive community, opposes this application unanimously. Thanks so much for your time.
Thank you. The next speaker we have is Mr. Taranto.
Hi, good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning. Good morning, Chairman Hicks. Good to see you all. So my name is Adam Taranto. I live at 617 Dorothea Drive, Raleigh, North Carolina. And I'm speaking to you in opposition of this plan. So first, I want to commend the applicant, Mr. Brown, for the thoughtfulness of the proposal, and I really truly mean that. However, I am going to have to say that the best code standard we have is the current zoning of this parcel. And there's two things I want to focus on. One is the precedential nature of this. And two, I have a little bit of a concern with the staff report itself in their analysis of consistency with the comprehensive plan. So I don't see any relevant policy goals, or at least only one, related to Chapter 5.2, which is about environmental protection. The goals of that chapter state adopt and enforce land use policies that reduce sprawl, preserve open space, and create compact, walkable urban communities. This is the definition of sprawl, and we should not be promoting it in an area that is currently zoned conservation management. This is not currently zoned R4 or R2 or anything like that. It's conservation management. There's a reason for that. I wonder why staff hasn't analyzed policies such as EP 1.7, EP 2.1, EP 2.3, or EP 3.2, and what is the consistency with this proposal with those policies. So you know I'm a huge supporter of more housing and more places and more types of housing and transit-friendly development. But in an area such as this, I think we have to recognize that some areas just are not good for development. This is one of those areas. Sometimes as a city, we have to say some areas are not suitable. This is one of those places the habitat is too sensitive, and we should not just exacerbate the issues that we have already in terms of storm, in terms of water quality. So this is a situation where we need to just maintain the current zoning. I would suggest a more thoughtful development plan could be done up on, say, a redevelopment of near the Food Lion or up on Gorman Street. We have so many parking areas in this city that could be, really thoughtful redevelopment, and the Avent Ferry Corridor plan could be a really good blueprint for where better and more housing could be put in this area. So thank you very much for your time.
Thank you. All right. Now I would like to allow for questions and comments from the commissioners. Does anybody have any questions or comments? Commissioner Mann.
Okay, thank you. I just got a couple of comments and questions, I guess. We said that the application was, or there was a application 5 years ago for the zoning case. So I'd just like to hear what has changed, or if at all, from 5 years ago. Any conditions that are different from 5 years ago. And then I also like to hear Mr. Brown's response to the opposition about how he plans to mitigate those negative impacts to the conservation or to the wetlands or stream. That he can, anything that he can respond to those to the opposition's comments. Thanks.
Thank you.
Good morning, Commissioner Mann. This is David Brown again. I think our answer is actually very simple. We are excluding development footprint from the wetlands. We are committing to have no fill in the floodplain. We are leaving it intact, but I believe to be the two most critical areas on the site. There are also the majority of the stream buffer and the low-lying lands adjacent to streams A, B, and C. Just by limiting, excluding development and a commitment to protect those areas, I actually think is exemplary. I work with the City of Raleigh ordinances in my day-to-day life, and it is certainly my professional opinion that this case and the conditions offered are far above code. I actually think it does set a new precedent for protecting the environment where you have sensitive environmental land, but at the same time recognizing that there is some land area, it's about a third of the site, is high and dry and is above those sensitive areas. I don't know if that answers your question.
Yes, that does about the second part, but can you speak to the first part about how the applicant, how you came 5 years ago, and just a comment about 5 years ago, can you address what's different or if there's any difference between now and then?
We didn't work on the case 5 years ago, and I'm not very familiar with that case, but my recollection is compared to today, we have much more and more stringent protection of these sensitive environmental areas. That is a key difference. And certainly in the last 5 years, Raleigh continues to grow, and we're looking for available places to place housing. Again, a site that is adjacent to, walkable to a shopping district with a grocery store, and is served by 2 different transit lines.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Commissioner Bennett and then Commissioner Winters.
Thank you. I was just going to also commend the applicant. I can tell that they've been very thoughtful about trying to preserve wetlands and mitigate impacts to the extent that they can. But I kind of agreed with the second caller. I had taken some notes when I was going through this. It surprised me that the staff report did not mention the comprehensive plan policies about environmental protection and preserving open space. I noted that there was a consistency with the policy about open space and development, but there was no discussion about the policies about the environmental protection and preserving open space. That surprised me a little bit. So I think, I don't know, I agree that there is a shortage of housing or certain types of housing, but I don't know that I agree that we just need to put it wherever we can put it to the detriment of the environment. Although I can tell that the applicant has been very thoughtful about trying to mitigate impacts, I tend to agree with the caller that the best way to mitigate impacts in a place like this is to simply not develop in it. Thanks.
Thank you. Any additional questions? Commissioner Lampman.
This is just a simple one. What is downstream on the Walnut Creek Trail? Is it Lake Raleigh Or is it the other way?
Lake Raleigh.
Okay, thanks.
I have a question for, I think, staff, possibly the applicant can answer it. One of I think the first caller mentioned that the CM zoning has been in place for 50 years. And I wondered if someone could speak to what the history is of that land and how it came to have the CM designation.
Sure. This is Hannah Reckow. The CM zoning, my understanding is, was part of a larger rezoning of the Lake Johnson area in the 1970s. I believe they used at the time, current floodplain maps to establish that, and the property may have been at the time in that area, but currently does not have floodway area on the property. Did that answer your question?
I think so.
I would only add to that, and I'm not 100% sure of the history, but if you take a parcel and map it CM, because of the severe restrictions on CM, that would be a taking. So, and that would have been widely understood in 1974. So this CM must have been applied as part of a larger zoning scheme where this was once part of a bigger tract, where a portion of the tract was zoned for development and another portion was set aside for preservation. When you see CM on private property, that's almost always how it came about. And in many cases, that was part of a petition case, but apparently in this case, in the 70s, this was city initiated.
Thank you. Do we have any additional questions or comments from commissioners? Okay. I do, well, okay. Well, if there's no further comments, sorry, I was just gathering my thoughts. Commissioner Lampman.
I do think that the topography there and the slope does provide enough of a opportunity for providing housing. I mean, I'm looking across the street and, you know, really that development's not too far away. I understand that this is very close to the trail, and I think that he has done, you know, made mitigating efforts. I do think that topography is not awful there for some level of development, and that's just my observation. I know that, for example, across the street seemed to have been waived from the designation, but not, you know, this particular site. And I think that goes to the comment about, you know, how this was deemed back in the 70s.
I do have a question. Oh, Commissioner McIntosh.
Oh, go on with what you were going to say, Deacon. I can say something after you.
I do have a question for the applicant about connection to the Greenway. And I apologize if that's already been covered.
The connection to the Greenway would be provided at time of either a site plan or a subdivision request. That would be a standard feature in Raleigh when you're adjacent to a Greenway, and there's a feasible path to the Greenway to provide a connector, either from the property directly to the Greenway Trail and/or by building, there's a missing leg of sidewalk between the subject property and the actual Greenway crossing over Gorman Street. It's about 290 linear feet. It's technically on city, adjoined city property in the right of way, but probably both of those would be the answer on how we would connect this site to the Greenway.
Thank you. Commissioner McIntosh.
I guess I was surprised reading this, that there was planning for development and conservation management. And I'm just going to venture that when this was designated as conservation management in the 70s, that, it was not only to protect the wetland area, but also the hardwood forest that we've heard described. And, the trees uphill from the wetlands also protect from flooding. And it seems like this was designated, as one area, and our comprehensive plan talks about protecting these conservation management areas. And so I guess I'm agreeing with Commissioner Bennett's comments that this is worth protecting.
Thank you. Commissioner Lampman.
This might be a question for staff. For a parcel like this, where if it is not developable, what does the city do, if anything, for not just a developer, but an owner of this land? I mean, because is the owner supposed to be paying taxes on something that is designated for preservation, where they're not going to get any economic benefit from this site?
So, as was brought up, the current assessed value on this land is $71,000, and it has been paying taxes. You cannot build on it. If you owned it, you could do other things. You could camp out on it, or do some very minimal types of things on land zone conservation management. I'm not here to defend the current assessment, but obviously, if it were zoned for development, it would have a much higher tax value than it has, and would have been paying more taxes over that period of time. What we can possibly surmise is that, and this, again, is sort of reconstructing things, and I don't have a firm grasp of the history, was that at some point, this parcel was probably connected to the parcels across Gorman Street before Gorman Street was constructed. You can see how Gorman Street sort of slices through what had been a pre-existing pattern of land subdivision here. When the zoning was put in place, this became an independent parcel, but it had the CM zoning. There's also CM zoning and R10 zoning on the parcels across Gorman Street. At some point, this parcel changed hands, and whoever acquired it with the CM zoning in place.
Okay, seeing no further comment, I would entertain a motion if ready. Commissioner Mann?
I'll make a motion to approve the zoning case. The rezoning case is inconsistent with the future land use map. However, it is consistent with the relevant policies in the comprehensive plan. And a motion for approval is reasonable in the public interest because if approved, the future land use map will be amended to the subject parcel on any private open space in public parks and low density residential public parks and open space. So I move approval with the caveat that it being inconsistent with the future land use map needing an amendment and consistent with the comprehensive plan.
All right, we have a motion. Do we have a second? Commissioner Lampman.
Second.
All right, Commissioner Mann has made a motion and Commissioner Lampman second. I will ask Shanitha for a roll call of members to record individual votes and attendance the roll call, I will announce the outcome of the vote.
Commissioner Bennett, how do you vote?
Nay.
Commissioner Fox?
Nay.
Commissioner Hicks?
Nay.
I'm sorry,
Nay.
Commissioner Lampman?
Aye.
Commissioner Mann?
Aye.
Commissioner McIntosh?
Nay.
Commissioner Winters?
Nay.
Commissioner Miller?
I'm sorry, I apologize. Commissioner Miller?
Aye.
So I believe we have 3 ayes and I have 8 nays. Somehow it's too many. 1, 4, 5. Okay, so we have 3 ayes and 4 nays. And Shanitha, do you need the names of each?
I have them.
Thank you. So the motion does not pass. And so do we need another motion? Or
Yes, the planning commission hasn't acted because it didn't receive sufficient affirmative votes. So you would need a motion to deny or a motion to send it out without recommendation.
okay, thank you. So do we have a motion to deny or send out without further recommendation? Commissioner Winters.
I'm gonna need some help with this language, Roberta. Get ready. I move that we deny this plan because of its inconsistency with the future land use map, and it is not reasonable in the public interest due to environmental impacts. Roberta, was that okay?
Do I have a second? Is there a second? Commissioner Bennett.
Second.
Thank you. So there's a motion by Commissioner Winters to deny and a second by Commissioner Bennett. And I just wanted to add a comment that I do appreciate the thoughtfulness of the application. I think, clearly there's been a lot of work done to address a lot of the concerns. I have some questions about the history of this piece of property and if it has been promised, to remain CM as part of a larger rezoning. So anyway, so that's why I'm voting to deny. Okay, if there aren't any other further comments, I would ask Shanitha for a roll call.
One more comment.
Oh, Commissioner Winters, thank you.
I would also like to comment, and I please do not take my motion as not appreciating all that you've done. As everyone has said, this is a worthwhile project. It's just more so the area that is troublesome. And I think this will be a great project in other areas of Raleigh where there isn't so much of an impact, an impact. So I'll just leave it there. So thank you again so much.
Okay, Shanitha, I think we're ready.
Okay. Commissioner Bennett, how do you vote?
Aye.
Commissioner Fox?
Aye.
Commissioner Hicks?
Aye.
Commissioner Lampman?
Nay.
Commissioner Mann?
No.
Commissioner McIntosh?
Aye.
Commissioner Miller,
Nay.
Okay.
and I'm sorry, Commissioner Winters.
Aye.
So we have we have 4 votes aye and we have 3 votes nay. So the motion passes. Okay, thank you very much. The next case is case number Z3120. Bear with me a second here. This request is to rezone approximately 1 acre of land from residential 6 to residential 10 conditional use. This case appeared on a previous consent agenda but has not been discussed. We will hear from staff, a staff presentation and an applicant presentation, and there is no one from the public to speak. I would ask to hear from staff and to hold all questions until we've heard from staff. John Anagnost will provide the staff presentation. Oh.
Good morning. This is Z-31-20. Sorry for the error on that first slide. This is at the north end of Woodlawn Drive. It's 2 parcels with a total area of just over 1 acre, currently zoned residential 6, with a request to rezone to residential 10. Next slide, please. These parcels were originally subdivided as part of the Winter Park neighborhood, which extends to the south on Woodlawn Drive to North New Hope Road. And they are similar in size to the other parcels in that neighborhood, which is around 1/2 an acre each. The other areas around here have a mix of residential types. So to the east is a neighborhood that's zoned residential 6, and the lots are corresponding in size. And then to the north is the Valley Cove neighborhood, zoned residential 10. And the density there is slightly less than 10 units per acre, but it does have lot sizes that are around the residential 10 lot size due to the open space set aside for that CM area. Next slide, please. This general area is southeast of the intersection of Lewisburg Road and North New Hope Road. So there is some mixed use zoning and some commercial development along Lewisburg Road, but otherwise mostly residential area. There's the Kyle Drive property to the east, which is an undeveloped city park property. There is not currently a master plan nor funding programs for that property to be developed, but it would eventually be developed and connect to the city's greenway system with an eventual connection both to the south to Marsh Creek Park and to the north to Spring Forest Road Park. Next slide, please. Here you can see a little bit closer in the aerial photo. The 2 lots are fully wooded currently. One important thing to note about these 2 lots, as you can see in this image, is that there was right-of-way dedicated with the subdivision, the original subdivision of the Winter Park neighborhood in the 1950s. But the end of Woodlawn Drive and the connections to Brook Valley and James Road were never constructed as part of the development of the Winter Park neighborhood to the south. So these are the only 2 remaining parcels in the neighborhood, and any construction of these 2 parcels, whether it's in the current zoning or the proposed zoning, would require construction of streets on both sides of these parcels. Next slide, please. Here you can see some of the character in the area. So the photo on the top left is the Winter Park neighborhood. So that's south of the site. You can see the sort of larger lots and deeper setbacks in that neighborhood. The top right image is to the east in the Brook Valley neighborhood. That's zoned residential 6 and has more of a 2-story and smaller lot character. And then bottom left is the Valley Cove neighborhood, where you can see the even slightly smaller lots and closer front setback corresponding to the residential 10 zoning there. And then the bottom right just gives a little bit farther south on Woodlawn Drive, deeper into the Winter Park neighborhood. You can see a little bit more about what the character is in that area. So again, large front setbacks and large lots. Next slide, please. There is one zoning condition offered, which is to limit development to 8 dwelling units. So the current zoning would allow 6 dwelling units, it is likely that those could be developed on the 2 lots in question. The proposed zoning without zoning conditions would allow up to 10 units, and so this is basically splitting the difference at 8 units. And so in the residential 10 zoning that's proposed, apartment and townhouse building type would be allowed. Next slide, please. Here you can see the density breakdown. So with that control of the density and the zoning conditions, the overall density would be around 7.4 units per acre. So in excess of the low density residential designation for the site, and of course the apartment and townhouse building types that would be allowed, also not consistent with the low density residential recommendation. Next slide, please. And here you can see those designations. So the surrounding area is all low density residential. There is some moderate density residential closer to New Hope Road and some mixed use designations along Lewisburg Road. So this request is inconsistent with the low density residential designation. Next slide, please. There's no urban form in this area, so not relevant. Next slide, please. Overall, this request has been evaluated as consistent with the comprehensive plan due to the similar level of density that would be allowed relative to the nearby existing development, and also that it would allow additional housing. The other aspect that is relevant to that evaluation of consistency is that the residential infill compatibility standards would apply to these 2 lots because they are surrounded by existing subdivided residential lots. And so there would be additional controls of front setbacks relative to other nearby houses. There also would be control of the side wall height for any development, whether that is attached, detached, townhouse, or apartment. The sidewall height has a maximum of 22 feet at the setback line and then may step up from there. And that sidewall height maximum in the residential infill compatibility areas may increase to 25 feet with the text change that you just sent to the City Council today. Next slide, please. Here you can see those policies related to housing and the infill compatibility standards, creating a compatible development style regardless of building type. Next slide, please. That being said, there is some potential for development based on this proposed zoning that would allow greater height and some smaller setbacks on some sides of the property, and of course the different building types, which are a little bit different than the character in the surrounding neighborhoods. So those policies are inconsistent. Next slide, please. So approval of this request would require an amendment to the future land use map to moderate density residential to reflect the additional density in building types. Next slide, please. The deadline for you to make a recommendation is December 7th of this year. And I'll be happy to take any questions.
Thank you. Thank you. Next, we will hear from the applicant, Peter Giddo. Apologize if I didn't pronounce your name correctly.
Hello, how are you?
Doing well, thank you. Welcome.
Good, welcome. Thank you. I appreciate you guys. We have this project here that I bought. We did the neighborhood meeting with the community. We from there they talked about wanting to limit us to eight units. So that's what we did. We went ahead and limited us to 8 units. Our intent is to build 8 single-family houses at that location, and to stick with the character of the neighborhood to my north, and I believe to the east there. The one to the south talked about the connecting roads. That was another one of their complaints when we were there. We, as the city staff member mentioned, the city staff told us that we do have to connect all the roads to the existing stub outs. So these 2 parcels are projects that we want to take and bring to have 8 single family houses, and we're hoping to redevelop them to allow for that to happen.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, there's no one else signed up to speak on this matter, so I would now like to allow for questions and comments from commissioners. Does anyone have a question or comment?
I do have one neighbor signed up in opposition.
Oh, so sorry. Okay. If you'll cue them up, thank you.
By name of Larry Lockett.
Speaking. How are you?
Doing well, thank you. Welcome.
My question, and I live at 4313 Woodlawn Drive, and my question is, I know I read that a traffic study cannot be conducted because it's currently a dead end road, but it's gonna it has to be open before a traffic study can be done, and in order to attempt to put speed bumps and such stuff like that. But my question is to the committee. I think it needs to be a consideration right there on Newhart Road, right there, the curve, the subdivision, this in front of our subdivision, the access has been cut off. I think it had been dead end and put a rail there. But I think the major concern is that our street, Woodlawn Drive, connecting to Woodlawn Drive on the other end, it's going to be a large thoroughfare cut through, and it's going to just come straight through this subdivision, the Winter Park subdivision, instead of the traffic going around Lewisburg Road, getting back into the larger subdivision in front of us. I think a consideration should be made about our quality of life. The roads are not a car on each side of the road. If I park my car in front of the house and my neighbor park his car in front of his house, it will only be one vehicle accessible in the center, and by the traffic flow, it would create a tremendous traffic issue, as well as we don't have sidewalks since we're kind of in the county, and walking our pets or walking our children and things like that, it would be kind of real detrimental to the neighborhood. And that's my comment. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Lockett. Commissioner Bennett.
Thank you. That was the question that I was going to ask if we had anybody from traffic on the phone about connecting those roads and the potential for traffic to be cutting through there. Somebody had emailed us about the accident data. So I have concerns too. I didn't realize the road was as narrow as it is. Based on what that caller just said, that could create issue too if this is now a cut through with traffic going through, but there's only room for one vehicle with vehicles parked on the side. What can be done about that to ensure the safety of pedestrians, cyclists?
This is Jason Myers with Transportation. There's a couple issues here. One of them is that the neighborhood to the south, and actually the neighborhood that these two parcels are currently a part of, is not annexed into the city. And those streets can't be built to city standard by city policy and by city action. If those properties were annexed, if those properties were subdivided, they probably would be annexed. And that's one of the things that our traffic calming, street improvement petition process and sidewalk petition process could address. What we can do is this applicant, in building the sections of street that they're required to construct, could design those streets in particular ways to ensure that people drive slowly through there. And there's a lot of different traffic calming treatments that they could build into their site plan that wouldn't necessarily take up any more of the site, any more of the land. And so that's something that the applicant could explore. A neighborhood traffic circle is one particular design that might make sense in a context like this. We have a four-way intersection, and you want to make sure people don't go fast down a long straightaway. That said, we're only in control of the city's streets at the north and the east of this site, and the NCDOT maintain neighborhood streets for the county art parcels are not something that the city can address at this time. If those residents petition to be annexed, then we could. And if there was a subdivision, we probably would that would result in the same thing. The other thing I wanted to address is that the closure of, I think it's Fawn Glen, was executed a couple of years ago by NCDOT, which is one of the things that the citizen mentioned. That was not done for traffic calming reasons. That was done for the safety of New Hope Road itself. There is a bit of a curve there on New Hope Road, and there's some grade change at that intersection. And NCDOT decided that it was appropriate to put a guardrail because there were some pretty severe crashes that were happening where people were running off the road. And I don't know, I haven't looked at those crash reports, but my understanding is that it was individuals driving well in excess of the speed limit, losing control of their vehicles, probably late at night when they didn't think anybody was around. And NCDOT's response was to put a guardrail, which did block the street connection that's at Fawn Glen right now. It is quite a ways around to get back to those same neighborhoods. And so I don't necessarily see the cut through potential to be high on Woodlawn. It is certainly there, but it will also allow people who live on Woodlawn to head north and exit their neighborhoods onto Lewisburg through a shorter path. So having connected streets allows everybody to drive shorter distances, which leads to total less traffic. But it is important for us to carefully design streets. And it's something our development engineering staff think very much about when they're reviewing site plans. So hopefully that answers your question, and maybe the applicant can address that as well.
Can I have a follow-up?
Thank you. Yes, Commissioner.
Thank you, Jason. I was going to ask if that's something the applicant is willing to consider in the site plan. It's the design of the street to try to calm the traffic.
Hello. Am I speaking again? Am I good?
Yes, you are. Thank you.
Thank you. And it's tough to tell. I believe you are Ms. Bennett. Is that correct?
Yes.
Perfect. Hi, Ms. Bennett. We did consider the traffic. Just understand that these were already dedicated right-of-ways and that they spoke to that. So the right-of-ways were already there and are there now. So I actually offered to not connect the roads. That was my offer to the city, but the city told me that was not allowed, that I had to connect the roads. I have my engineers in on the meeting as well who designed this with the city, and that was the major concern brought up during the meeting with the neighborhood. And our offer was to not connect the roads, and the city said that they connected roads were required. I offered to just come in off of the two and not connect the two woodlawns together, and the city said that they would require me to connect the two woodlawns together.
Okay, thank you.
And I have my engineers on the line as well who were there in that meeting, and they could speak to that more technically than I can. But that was definitely a consideration of ours to not connect the roads together.
Commissioner Bennett, was your question trying to drive at whether or not the applicant would be amenable to the installation of a traffic calming device like the circle at the intersection, which if you wanted to, he would have to offer that up as a condition. I just wanted to make sure, because I wasn't sure that answered your question.
Right. Is the applicant amenable to looking at traffic calming measures like a circle to slow the traffic down, since it is required that the roads be connected and there is the potential for safety issues?
Sure. What does I wouldn't want to agree to something right now without looking at it. If that makes, like, I would have to look at it. If you're saying you want me to look at it before I come to site plan, I can definitely look at it. I have no problem looking at anything that would make the community happier. And that if that I'd have to look at it and see if that's worth the extra, money for one, and then two for the two lots that I would get. So I definitely would consider looking at it. Absolutely. If your question is, could we add that as an addition, I would then consider looking at it. Yes.
Okay. Thank you.
Commissioner Lampman, I think you had your hand up. No. Any other questions or Commissioner Fox?
If that's the case, then and we're not running afoul of our timelines, I'd be interested in holding this one to see what an additional traffic calming condition might look like.
So, and just so I understand, and I guess when we talk to the, see, if I have no problem with that, I am definitely open to doing that. I just, I'm not looking to go and add any additional traffic than only 2 more houses from what would be required if I went and did this without rezoning. So if I didn't rezone, I'm at 6. If I rezone, I'm just asking to get to 8. And so that was when we talked to the city. No matter what, the biggest, the obvious, the easiest thing for me not to do would be to connect the roads. That was the traffic calming that would make sense. That would be the most cost effective that I could do. If I also we talked to them about doing a 4-way stop there as well, and that would be an easy way to do it instead of some very cost prohibitive device for only 2 lots. I'm not trying to, I don't want to go and say it's going to cost some crazy amount of money to put in a traffic circle for only 2 lots. And that's why we talked about doing a 4-way stop or not connecting the roads. Not connecting the roads is not an option. And then so I was absolutely open to, and I'm open to doing a 4-way stop there. I would agree to that right now. That is a very easy thing for me to do, to just put a 4-way stop in there now, if that's something that I could agree to now.
Thank you. So I think you can add that as a condition to your application. Staff can guide me here, but I think in order to do that, we would want to hold it at the table to see that added condition at our next meeting. Is that correct? Yes. Thank you. So if that's something that you would be open to, then I think I'm hearing from commissioners that there's some interest in holding it at the table.
I'll second if necessary.
Okay. Commissioner Bennett.
Can Jason just respond about the 4-way stop? Is that, I mean, is that a good condition? Would that, in your expert opinion, do you think that would help alleviate the safety issues, or are you favoring the traffic circle? I mean, I understand what the applicant is saying. If he has 2 lots, he doesn't want something that's cost prohibitive. So would the 4-way stop work as well?
I don't think it's appropriate to have a condition requiring a 4-way stop, especially when we can't, because the southern leg of this street is an NCDOT maintained street, city staff is not able to make a judgment call based on a sketch plan at this point and have any solid feedback there. It would have to involve the State Department of Transportation. The applicant could offer a condition to pay for the installation of an all-way stop, which is a pretty minimal, that's 2 signs and 2 posts above what would normally be done in a situation like this. So the applicant could certainly offer to install those as part of a site plan if permitted by the state and if permitted by the city's Department of Transportation. I think that we could look at it a little bit more before your next meeting if we wanted to. We could certainly look at what traffic calming treatments look like or what potential looks like and make sure that the applicant's engineer understands what we're talking about. I don't think that one of the things that I realize is that a traffic circle means a lot of different things to different people. And there is an appropriate residential scale neighborhood traffic circle that might work in this situation and wouldn't take more right of way and wouldn't be a large additional expense. But I'm not seeing as pro forma to know what large is to this particular development.
Yeah. Can I speak for just a second and then let my engineer speak for just a second? Is that okay, Ms. Bennett?
Yes, you may. Thank you.
All right.
Thanks.
Sorry, it's whoever's on my screen is who I'm looking at. I only see one person at a time. So my engineers, Veteran Engineering's Michael and Tom are on the line, and I'll let them speak to the traffic issue. I just want to speak to the fact of the cost that I'm already dealing with dedicated right-of-ways. So I already have to expand the right-of-way to bring on my property to bring it up to current city standards. The south was the DOT part, and DOT would tell you that their road, they have no complaints. From there, because the only reason they got rid of Fawn Glen, from what we talked to when I talked to the DOT personally about this project, was the only reason they got rid of Fawn Glen was due to those accidents. That they don't have any plans for this road because it's a community road, and the community has mentioned the problems they've had with DOT taking care of the road. Though it's in the city's ETJ, it's a community, an NCDOT road. But I'll let the engineers speak to about the traffic circle. I just want to be clear that I didn't want to make it sound like I'm only about the dollar, but I'm only talking about 2 extra lots to try. If we talked about this massive traffic circle at Gorman Street, well, that doesn't work for me. I would just need to, before I agreed to do a traffic circle, have to see what they talked about. Mike and Tom, are you there?
Yes, this is Michael Joseph. Can you hear me?
Yes, thank you. Welcome.
Oh, thank you. I'm with the Veteran Engineering Associates, and thank you for the opportunity to speak here today. So we have looked at that. When we had our neighborhood meeting, there was severe opposition into connecting Woodlawn North to Woodlawn South. Our meeting went on for almost 3 hours of complaining about that connection. We had, like Pete was saying, we had offered to them the potential of a 4-way stop. Of course, DOT being the owner of the right-of-way to the south, that's going to be an issue working with DOT. But we had not considered a traffic circle in our original analysis just because of the density. That's a pretty large burden to put on such a small development. But if there's any other questions or comments, I'd be happy to address that.
Thank you. Commissioner Lampman.
This might be a question for city staff. Well, I have 2 questions, actually. One is, okay, if they do have to do the extension, could they, I know we talked about 4-way stops, could they do a speed bump? And then the second question is, I guess I need a little bit more clarification, and I apologize, this is my lack of knowledge here, on the annexation. So it won't be annexed in, and so how does the city, if this is not annexed, how does the city have insight into extending a road? I just might be confused about that.
Yeah, this is Jason Myers. The second question about annexation, I presume, and the planning department staff can correct me if I'm wrong, that subdivision of these 2 lots would probably result in annexation, and any new streets built would be city maintained streets within the existing right-of-way. They'd be built to city standard and accepted for city maintenance, just like the Woodlawn to the north and Brook Valley to the east have been built to city standards and accepted for city maintenance. It's the existing neighborhood to the south that is an NCDOT maintained street in county parcels that are not currently annexed that we don't necessarily see a way that is going to change soon. So it's not the new sections of streets, it's the existing section of street that is outside of the city. And your first question was, and I apologize, I lost it while I was answering the second one. Maybe.
Sorry, it's just about a speed bump instead of a 4-way or a circle.
Yes, correct. Thank you. It's not something that our current traffic calming policy really allows us to do, is to condition for traffic calming in the strictest sense of traffic calming. Because of our traffic calming policy being a petition driven program, but that does not mean we cannot have accept a condition that requires certain types of street design as we do that. And I think that there's some controversy amongst the Department of Transportation of whether a speed hump is an appropriate intersection treatment, or is an appropriate treatment in a zoning condition or not. because it is kind of the nuclear option as people describe it because of its impact to emergency access and everything. I would like to, if it pleases the commission, and if the podium can pull it up, we have an example image of a neighborhood traffic circle that I'd like to show, because if people are imagining a roundabout like is on Hillsborough Street, that is absolutely not appropriate and would not be proportional. But this might be Staten Island if I remember when I found this image. But this sort of very small circle of curb in the middle of the intersection would fit in the same intersection footprint that would already be built to city standard. And that is something that I know that my colleagues in traffic engineering would not be opposed to that being built, may ask for it to be built at site plan review regardless of there being a zoning condition, but there would not be any certainty that could happen. We do not have a standard that would require this sort of treatment. And this would certainly help slow people driving north-south through Woodlawn if something like this were built. Hopefully this helps a little bit.
Thank you. Commissioner Lampman.
Sorry, I just have one more question about the annexation. So my understanding would be that if the site is annexed, that there would be relatively decent tax revenue coming to Raleigh. I mean, not, relatively, but for the size, would there be any offer since the applicant has already agreed to do the extension, would there be any offer for Raleigh to participate in the roundabout since they're going to get future taxes? I don't know. I just thought I'd ask the question.
This is John Anagnost. I don't know of any reimbursement program or a traffic circle. I think Jason might have more information, but reimbursement for construction of street improvements in the city is typically for a 4-lane or larger street, where essentially the consideration is that the amount of laneage that the applicant or the developer is constructing is beyond the amount of demand that they're producing with their development, and therefore the city has an obligation to fill in some of that cost. In this case, these improvements are neighborhood street improvements, which are reflective of the level of development that's taking place. I would invite Jason to provide any additional clarification there.
Our reimbursement program, there's a couple of aspects of applicable to this case. One is that it is to provide infrastructure not required by the development standard. So if there is a zoning condition requiring something above normal standard, that's still deemed to be required by the development code. And so the reimbursement would not apply. The other thing is reimbursements are paid for by thoroughfare facility fees. So there is a per unit charge for building a residential unit in the city of Raleigh. There is also similar charges per square foot of office and hotel, if I'm not mistaken. There may be some other situations too, and that those fees are collected and used for transportation improvements that generally increase capacity. There's a lot of different ways we use those. I don't want to get into the financing of all that right now, but I think what you were addressing is almost like a synthetic TIF to create a reimbursement. I think technically, legally, city council might be able to do that. I would defer to the city attorney on that, but it would be highly unusual and probably take a lot of effort from city council and city staff and the applicant. And that's not I guess a normal thing. I think the cost of something like this is pretty minimal, and it wouldn't be appropriate to try to build a public-private partnership to do one very small street design change.
So I have a question for staff. How can, I think I'm hearing a desire from commissioners to have some sort of condition, if possible, that would allow for traffic calming. I don't know that we necessarily have to have a specific commitment to a specific device. I think I'm also hearing from the applicant that they're very much willing to address it, but would don't want to commit to something before they know what it is and the associated costs of it. How can we work up a condition in such a way that's able to accommodate all of these items.
Ms. Hicks, can I speak really quickly before you ask the staff that? So the engineers have been talking to me as you guys are speaking, and the device that they're showing, the city staff showed on the podium there, is actually a relatively inexpensive feature. Like I said, I think you're at the same point that I am. I believe that I don't want to not agree to something. I just don't want to agree to something that would be so cost prohibitive that the two lots wouldn't make sense. And then I've already been annexed at this point, and now I've got a problem. So what I was looking at, and I no problem adding a condition. I just want to make sure that the condition, like you say, is broad enough that I don't do nothing and that we don't agree to me doing something that makes this project now be two dead lots in the water for infinity because we've agreed to this thing that costs a lot of money. So I'm all the way at 0 to something that I could do that still fits in my budget, given that I'm at 6 lots and only trying to go to 8. And I'm not going to be building $1 million houses. The average sales price around there is $250,000. So I'm not trying to build some extravagant house in there. These are affordable houses. I'm trying to do what's already there. So I really would like to just make sure that what we agree to today or what we look forward to our next meeting is something that doesn't so strict on me that I can't do this development.
Thank you. Yes, I hear you loud and clear.
Thank you.
Sure. Does staff have any guidance on how we might be able to do that?
This is Travis. What you might want to consider is deferring the case and allowing the applicant to consider a condition. Staff will work with the applicant, and this case can come back in 2 weeks.
Thank you. That sounds great. So without further objection, we will defer case Z3120 until our next Planning Commission meeting so that the applicant and staff can work out some conditions to address traffic calming. Okay. And I think with that, we can move on to the next case. Thank you, everybody. The next case is Z3220. This is a request to rezone approximately 2 acres of land from residential 10 to office mixed use, 3 stories, parking limited, conditional use. This is the first time that the request has been discussed, so we will hear a staff presentation, an applicant presentation, and for members of the public. JP Mansoff will provide an overview from staff.
Good morning. This is JP Mansoff. As the Vice Chair said, Z3220 is a request to rezone just over 2 acres of property at the corner of Falls and Moose Road and Harps Mill Road from R10 to OX3 PLCU. The Planning Commission's deadline for action is December 7th, and the last meeting before that deadline is November 24th. So here's a broad aerial of the surrounding area. So to Northridge Elementary is just across Harps Mill to the southeast, with Northridge Country Club just a little further to the southeast. The Northridge neighborhood, which is low density subdivision, is just to the northeast. And Ravenscroft School is across Falls and Moose Road to the northwest. Next slide, please. Zooming in a little closer on that corner, you can see there's currently a church just to the south of the site, and then office uses across Falls and Moose to the west and adjacent to the site on the north. So here are a couple of street level views of the site. The current site is currently developed with 8 duplex units and is heavily wooded, as you can see from these shots. So these are the proposed conditions. Condition 1 prohibits some of the higher impact uses that would otherwise be allowed in an OX district. Conditions 2 and 3 limit any development to 15,000 square feet and 2 stories. Condition 4 includes requirements for site lighting intended to limit impact on adjacent properties. Condition 5 specifies that post-development stormwater discharge for the 2, 10, 25, and 50-year storms cannot exceed pre-development peak flow rates for those same storm events. And this goes beyond the UDO, which requires developments to not exceed the pre-development rate for just the 2 and 10-year storms. And condition 6 specifies planting requirements in an area along the adjacent property to the west, in case it is not dedicated as tree conservation area. So that area will either be TCA or will be planted according to the requirements in that condition. So this is a comparison of entitlement between the existing zoning and proposed zoning. Because the conditions limit the square footage of any development on the site, the number of residential units allowed under the proposed zoning would be less than what would be allowed under the existing zoning. I would note here that these numbers assume an average unit size of 1,000 square feet, so more units could possibly be developed under the proposed zoning if they were smaller in size, just something to note. Office is not permitted under R10 zoning, so there's an increase there, and a small amount of retail would be allowed under the proposed OX district that would not be allowed under the current zoning. The requested OX district is consistent with the future land use map, which designates the site as office and residential mixed use. The proposed parking limited frontage is consistent with the urban form map, which designates Falls of Moose as a transit emphasis corridor. The request is consistent with the comprehensive plan overall, in addition to the future land use map and the urban form map. And here's a list of consistent policies. The request is consistent with policies about density, transitions, and impacts of commercial developments, in addition to policies about consistency with the future land use map and urban form maps. No inconsistent policies were identified, and there are no outstanding issues. And again, that deadline for action is December 7th, 2020.
Thank you. Next, we will hear from the applicant, Beth Trajos, who will present on behalf of the applicant.
Good morning, Vice Chair Hicks and Planning Commission. It's Beth Trajos, Nelson Mullins, 4140 Park Lake Avenue. I'm here this morning on behalf of Town Bank. And I've got a lot of folks with me on our team who are just available for questions. I'll tell you, Keith Horton with Town Bank, Richard Adams, Jordan Brewer, and David Dahlman with Kinley Horn, the project engineers, as well as Mike Winter and Katie Martin, who are the project architects with HBA Architecture. And they will not speak individually, but just be available to answer any questions that you might have. Thank JP for his hard work on this and his thorough presentation. As he indicated, we are requesting a rezoning of about 2 acres at the intersection of Falls of Moose Road and Harps Mill. They are currently developed for 8 duplex dwelling units, each with their own driveway. Town Bank would like to build a branch bank on this property, and their request is consistent with the comprehensive plan and the future land use map, which designates the area for office and residential mixed use. I would point out as well that Falls of Moose Road is a transit emphasis corridor, so we have added the parking limited frontage to our rezoning request. And it's particularly apt given that there is a bus stop directly in front of this site with frequent service. There are also existing sidewalks on both Falls of Moose and Harps Mill that make this site quite walkable from the broader area. Nearby and surrounding land uses, as JP pointed out, include offices and institutional uses on almost every side of this project. So the low intensity office use that's being proposed would fit in very well with the surrounding commercial and institutional uses. We have had 3 meetings with our neighbors inviting folks within 1,000 feet of the property. The primary area of concern we heard from our neighbors was stormwater. You'll note a lot of the existing office was developed before there were stormwater requirements in the City of Raleigh code, including these properties. There are no existing stormwater devices on these properties. And so there is a stormwater issue in the broader community that the City of Raleigh has acknowledged and has plans to address through a city stormwater project. But recognizing that was an issue, we have committed in our zoning conditions to detain up to the 50-year storm, which is above and beyond the code requirements. In addition, we have indicated a willingness to our neighbors to increase the detention requirement to the 100-year storm, although our preference would be to do that in conditions before the City Council so as not to create a delay. We do have some contractual issues that are weighing on us. And we know that you have very crowded agendas and might be glad not to have us back. In addition, conditions that we added as a result of our communication with our neighbors are the limitation on building area, the height limit to 2 stories, excluding a number of uses, many of which were particularly identified by some of our neighbors, a limitation on lighting, and provision for the 30-foot buffer adjacent to the remaining duplex to the south of the property on Harps Mill Road. I understand there are several folks here to speak. We would reserve time to answer those comments and any questions that you might have. And we would request your support of the proposed zoning and ideally your action today. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, there are some people signed up to speak on this matter. And as a reminder, each speaker has 2 minutes to speak. And I'd ask the moderator to introduce the first speaker.
The first speaker is Kimberly Conroy.
I want to thank y'all for listening to my small voice today. This came to my attention last week. I've lived on Harps Mill Road for 26 years, so I've watched the city's plan go into development, and I've watched the growth. I've seen traffic become fairly unbearable on Falls of the Neuse Road and the gross impact it's had on Harps Mill Road. So this change concerns me, and I want to learn more about it, but I am concerned for 2 main reasons. One is I know that those duplexes provide 8 units of affordable housing near a bus stop. And that's really rare to find in my section of Raleigh. So I love that they're there, and I consider them my neighbors. They are renters. They take care of their homes, and so do the landlords. My second concern is changing the beauty of my neighborhood. When I come into Northridge, it's beautiful. You saw the pictures of the trees. That's Northridge, where I live. We're known for our rolling hills and our trees. I hate to see another corner lose their trees like we did on the other side of Harps Mill, which is more commercial in nature. But on our side of the Harps Mill in Northridge, I just want to preserve the beauty of our subdivision. I don't know why the duplexes have to be torn down or why anything needs to be rezoned. They're beautiful. They fall into the beauty of our neighborhood. We have the trees, and they don't provide a lot of traffic. I don't think I've ever had to wait to get anyone out of their driveway. But it is hard turning into Harps Mill from Falls of the Neuse already. It's hard to get onto Falls of the Neuse from Harps Mill, and putting another commercial building on the corner does concern me. And those are my concerns. Thank you.
Thank you. I believe we have another speaker signed up.
Hi, can you all hear me? This is Charles Cox. I'm a resident of Northridge.
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay, great. First of all, thank you for allowing me to speak today. I did want to take the opportunity just to say that we are not opposed to the town bank and want to express gratitude in them working with us. Our biggest concern of this project is we are at the bottom of the storm water Northridge Storm Water Project, which has been ongoing for the last 15 years. And in the recent years, it's just gotten even worse, and our property is severely affected. So our biggest concern is the storm water, although Beth Trejos did leave me a voicemail the other day saying that they would update their retention pond to the 100-year. So we do appreciate that and recognize that. I guess our biggest stipulation is that a project that has gone unseen and not really been taken full advantage of in the past years is that the Northridge Stormwater Project, and that we would like to see true completion of the stormwater before construction begins on the town bank. I know this is probably not a realization, but those are our concerns. That's what we would like to see. We just, we're just trying to keep the pedal to the metal on the stormwater project. And that's why we wanted to be heard today. So thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Cox. I think we have an additional speaker.
I think that is all that I have present.
Okay, thank you. All right. Questions or comments from commissioners? Commissioner Fox.
Can I get a little bit of clarity or some more information about the stormwater project that the caller was mentioning?
Yeah, so this is JP. I can speak to that a little bit. I did have some correspondence with Todd Rawl, who is the project manager for that stormwater project. It has been dormant for close to 5 years, but just recently they were conducting interviews for a design consultant to finish the previously generated design and 60% plans, and so that project is in process. I'm not exactly sure what the timeline is, but it is in process.
Okay. Commissioner McIntosh.
I guess this is a question for city staff. I'm wondering, we're hearing about that there's this existing part of the neighborhood that's affordable units, well-maintained, it's a dispersed, affordable site within Raleigh. And I, as a person who, moved here midway through life, I really value Raleigh's focus on I'm forgetting the term for it, but the dispersed sites throughout Raleigh that are affordable, that blend in with neighborhoods. And it feels like the portions of the comprehensive plan that deal with maintaining neighborhoods and supporting, I guess the wording may not be there right now, but I mean, this is an example of equitable development done well. And it feels like, while I understand the staff report doesn't note this loss, it feels like losing these units doesn't feel compatible with the vision of the comprehensive plan to me. And I'm disappointed that there's not something in the staff report that speaks to that, because it feels like, we have a lot of proposals that come to us where if housing's in it, if housing's in it, even if it's not affordable, we actually don't actually see much subsidized housing at all in the cases we're reviewing. But even if it's adding housing, we're generally told this is good for Raleigh. So I'm wondering how is it good for Raleigh to be destroying housing, and especially affordable housing?
Thank you, Commissioner McIntosh.
So, you raise an important issue. I think that it's generally been our practice in the zoning reports to compare the impacts of the zoning to what can happen under the current zoning. And while the status quo is that there are duplex units, and I don't know what their rents are, but let's just posit that they're rented today because they're older at a relatively affordable rate, even though they are market rate. There's nothing stopping those units from being replaced or removed from the affordability pool under the current zoning. However, because the current zoning is residential, if they were to be replaced with something, it would probably be higher end residential as opposed to commercial. So I think your point is well taken. We could note that there is a potential for reduction in housing stock as a result of this rezoning. There is because it allows for commercial redevelopment of existing residential properties. But there's nothing in the current zoning that explicitly preserves the status quo of older duplex units that have affordable market rents.
Commissioner Bennett.
Thank you. I just want to echo what Commissioner McIntosh said. I don't really have an issue with this development at all. But when I was listening to the applicant talk about the amenities of the site being along transit, and there's a transit stop right there and the school's across the street, I thought, wow, that's a great place for affordable housing, which is currently there. But, I look at the future land use map and it is zoned office. So it's consistent. So I guess I'm just echoing the sadness that this affordable housing in an area that, let's be honest, is not affordable is a loss. And I just wanted to make that comment that it's a loss, but as Ken, as you just said, there's nothing stopping it from being redeveloped now under the current zoning to something that's not affordable. So I just wanted to note the loss of the affordable housing in an area that seems like a prime location for some affordable housing.
Thank you, Commissioner Bennett. Seeing no further comment, I'd entertain a motion. Commissioner Fox?
A motion to approve Z3220 as it is reasonable and in the public interest and consistent with the comprehensive plan, specifically policies related to managing commercial development impact, density transitions, frontage, and mitigating stormwater impacts.
Thank you. Is there a second? I'll second. Commissioner Miller?
Second.
All right, we have a motion from Commissioner Fox and a second from Commissioner Miller. I'll ask Shanitha for a roll call of members to record individual votes. And at the end of roll call, I will announce the vote.
Commissioner Bennett, how do you vote?
Aye.
Commissioner Fox?
Aye.
Commissioner Hicks?
Aye.
Commissioner Lampman?
Nay.
Commissioner Mann?
Aye.
Commissioner McIntosh?
Nay.
Commissioner Miller?
Aye. Aye.
Thank you. Commissioner Winters?
Nay.
Thank you. So that's 4 ayes and 3 nays. So the motion passes.
Madam Chair, I think it's actually 5-3.
5-3.
Thank you. Sorry, not doing very well on that. 5-3, and the motion passes. Thank you. Okay. The next item is case Z3320. This is a request to rezone approximately 10 acres of land from residential 6 to residential 10 conditional use. This request has not yet been discussed, and we will hear a staff presentation and an applicant presentation. Don Belk will now provide an overview from staff.
Good morning, Madam Chair, members of the Planning Commission. As you mentioned, this case Z3320 at 7900 Creedmoor Road is a request to rezone from its present R6 to R10 CU. Madam Chair, one moment, please. We have a difficulty in loading these slides. One moment, please.
Okay, thank you. Would it make sense to move to the next case possibly and come back to this one?
Yes, let's go ahead and do that, Madam Chair. Again, apologies for the delay.
No problem. So we will hold case Z3320 and come back to it. The next case is Z3720. This is a request to rezone approximately 1.5 acres of land from county zoning to residential 6. This is a general use case and there are no zoning conditions. This item previously appeared on the consent agenda but has not yet been discussed. And I would ask to hear from staff and hold all questions until the presentation is complete.
Yes, good morning. This is Ira Mabel. So as the chair mentioned, this is about an acre and a half. Currently under Durham County zoning. Property is located in Durham County, and the request is to go to R6, and your deadline is in December. So this is a little bit different than normal. The picture of the current zoning looks green, but it's really a blue hatch on top of yellow. So it's rural residential Durham zoning with one of Durham County's airport overlay districts. They have 2 airport overlay districts. The one that is not mapped prohibits a lot of stuff, including residential uses. The one that's actually on the site, so that blue one, if you can see the legend there, 60 to 65, that's the decibel level. Doesn't really have a lot of restrictions. Doesn't restrict residential uses, has a little bit about building construction. But sort of minimal extra regulation than their RR district would otherwise have. So the mostly residential uses all around the site, different flavors of density there. So that Mulberry Park is mentioned in the staff report as a townhouse development, but other sort of low density to moderate density residential uses in the area. So the reason that we're seeing this request even though the property is in Durham County, is because of the annexation agreement. So there is an annexation agreement between the city of Raleigh and the city of Durham, which really has everything to do with topography and the fact that water flows downhill. So it is a line of agreed upon by the two jurisdictions about who will provide service to which land area. So that pink line sort of on the eastern side of the screen is the actual county line, and that dotted white line is the annexation agreement line. And so the area in between is in Durham County, which is where this property is, and will remain in Durham County. But if anyone who's requesting services, namely water and utility and and sewer service, has to apply to the city of Raleigh. So that's why you're seeing it today. And I will say that all of those every other residential development here in that sort of area in the middle, in between the two lines, is already incorporated in Raleigh city limits, and does receive utility service from us. These are photos of the site I took myself a week or two ago. So there is already a house that is mostly fully constructed on the portion of the lot that is sort of normal lot shaped, the rectangular portion. So there is quite a big sort of triangle of land going south on Leesville Road. But there is the site is just outside of where we map the 65 decibel line. So the comprehensive plan has this map, EP-2, which shows the noise contours of the airport. So these are roughly different levels of daily noise from airplanes taking off and landing. So the blue area here is where the city of Raleigh has mapped our airport overlay district. We only have one, unlike Durham, which has two. And our overlay district does prohibit residential uses. So this site is somewhat in a sort of borderline situation outside of where there's really strong policy guidance to map the overlay district. And you can see, there's a lot of the residential, if you remember from the aerial, that is also similarly situated between the 60 and the 65 decibel contour line that does not have the overlay district applied. So ultimately, I think my analysis was that not mapping the overlay district was in keeping with our practice in other residential developments in this situation. So the increase here from 2 units to 8 units, I would say that this is where I would like to point out that our estimate is for these analyses of entitlement is really based on the site acreage. So you might remember the site is kind of shaped in a funny, and there's no way you could fit 8 units in that triangle portion and meet the minimum setback requirements. So this is really an on-paper increase from 2 to 8, although there would be some increase over 2. But so the future land use map here is moderate density residential, so it's consistent with that. And consistent overall with the comprehensive plan. So handful of consistent policies. The inconsistent policies, location of growth, this is not in our ETJ. So generally that says we should be growing first in our ETJ. And then despite me saying a few minutes ago that my analysis was that not mapping the airport overlay district was not inconsistent with policy, I did reach out to a representative from the airport for their opinion, which is our practice when things are going to be in the AOD. And they did express some concerns about new residential construction between the 60 and 65 decibel contour line. So it is mapped as an inconsistent policy and as an outstanding issue, really to note the airport's concern about about new construction here. So again, that outstanding issue and your deadline for action is in December. So I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. I believe, next we will hear from the applicant, David Brown.
Good morning again, Vice Chair Hicks, members of the Planning Commission, David Brown. Be brief, I think Ira has done a very thorough job outlining the specifics of this case. We certainly are available for questions and ask for your support and perhaps, if possible, action today. As you can see from the photos, there is a house already constructed. They are in a holding pattern until we resolve the annexation and also the zoning of the property. I'll stop for a moment, see if you have any questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Brown. I believe there's no one else signed up to speak on this matter. So with that, I would now like to allow for questions and comments from commissioners. Does anybody have any questions or comments? I have one question. Oh, Commissioner Lampman. I do have one question. I think this is so if this case moves forward, should another property structure be built on this property, would then they go through the process of ensuring that it would be built to meet the airport map, the 60 to 65 decibel map?
Mm-hmm. This is Ira Mabel again. So the request does not include the overlay. So barring the inclusion of the overlay either by the applicant or city council, then no. I would say the subdivision of this tract is pretty unlikely given the shape. So to subdivide and add an additional unit, given the shape and also accommodating the stream buffer to the back portion of the site.
Thank you.
I will also agree with Ira's assessment. As a professional land planner, I think it is almost impossible to site a separate dwelling on this property.
Okay, thank you very much. Any further questions or comments? Commissioner Lampman.
How many, this is for the applicant, how many units do you think you'll get on the site? And then furthermore, do you have a noise mitigation plan already for your development?
There is actually a single house located on the property. It was permitted through the city of Durham, Durham County. So it's already built, essentially. There are no plans to subdivide the property and add any additional dwellings. Because of the shape of the property, the dimensional standards, and also that stream buffer that Ira mentioned, I think it is all but impossible. So I think that answers the first question. And as far as the mitigation measures, I'm not closely involved with the construction of the home, but it's my understanding that they are using, very modern and contemporary construction methods, specifically window and door selection in response to that. But this essentially, this case is a small donut hole that we're proposing to close up. You can see it's an unusual shaped piece of land.
Commissioner Lampman?
So just to be clear that the site is just going to be rezoned to make it consistent as opposed to provide an opportunity for new development. It's just going to be the house.
That is correct. Thank you for helping me clarify that.
So this is Ira Mabel again, and the applicant can correct me, but my understanding is that they did receive permitting from Durham County, a subdivision permit, which is basically just to record the lot, and some construction permits up to basically plumbing and electrical, which then I believe the issue was raised for Durham County of the annexation agreement. So in order to receive utilities from the city of Raleigh, they have to petition to annex. And whenever we annex something that's not in our ETJ, we also have to zone it. So there's no way for them to get sewer and water service from us without us also zoning them at the same time. So there is an annexation petition they filed, and City Council will hear both at the same time, and theoretically approve the annexation and the zoning, ultimately, so that we can provide utility to the house.
Commissioner Lampman.
If no one is opposed, I'd like to provide a motion.
Great, thank you.
Okay. I'd like to motion to approve case number Z3720 Leesville Road. The rezoning request is reasonable and in the public interest, and is supported by the comprehensive plan and the future land use map. It's compatible with the surrounding area and allows for annexation into the city of Raleigh.
Thank you. Commissioner Fox.
Second.
Right, we have a motion to approve by Commissioner Lampman and a second by Commissioner Fox. There's no further discussion. I would ask Shanita for a roll call of all the members to record individual votes, and at the end of the roll call, I will announce the outcome of the vote.
Commissioner Bennett, how do you vote?
Aye.
Commissioner Fox?
Aye.
Commissioner Hicks?
Aye.
Commissioner Lampman?
Aye.
Commissioner Mann?
Aye.
Commissioner McIntosh?
Aye.
Commissioner Miller?
Aye.
Commissioner Winters?
Aye.
Okay, that's unanimous and the motion passes. Thank you. Are we ready to move back to Z3320? Yes.
Yes, we are. Thank you, Vice Chair Hicks. We'll proceed with rezoning Z3320, 7900 Creedmoor Road. This request to rezone from R6 to R10 CU. Next slide, please. The zoning in the area is predominantly residential. However, note the presence of commercial and office mixed use in close proximity to the site. Locational map showing its position in North Raleigh, near the interchange of Creedmoor and I-540, and near the intersection with Strickland Road. This view does show that proximity to various institutional office and commercial uses close to the subject site. Some views, the property is situated at the corner of Creedmoor and Morgan's Way. Secondary view, south view from Lodestar Drive. Some streetscape photographs showing the front view from Creedmoor Road and other streetscape views. The conditions, the applicant has conditioned several group living uses and prohibiting those uses in this proposal, as well as some of the other uses permitted in R10. Also, they are establishing a 30-year time frame for having this development be a minimum of 80% of occupants being age 55 or older. And also they have set a dwelling unit cap on the site, capping the maximum number of dwelling units as well as the maximum residential density on the site. Comparison of existing versus proposed zoning. Note the increase in the maximum units from existing to proposed. Again, there has been a cap placed on the maximum number of units. The carbon emission analysis notes that the proposal has both a higher walk score and a higher transit score than average. There is transit service available at the site. The Go Raleigh Route 36 serves this site, and there is a bus stop right outside the front door of the existing development. The proposal does add to the housing supply, and the entitlement would permit a variety of housing types with smaller lots than the city average. And the zoning is requested zoning is consistent with the flume and its designation of moderate density residential. Consistent with the future land use map, consistent with numerous policies. There is one consistent policy noted on buffering requirements. There is a substantial buffer at the rear of the site adjoining the residential area. The UDO would permit a minimum of a 20-foot buffer. However, the existing buffer is in some areas much wider than that. Your deadline for action would be December 21st of this year. There are no outstanding issues, and I would be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Velk. Next, we will hear from the applicant, Molly Stewart, and the applicant and those in support have a total of 10 minutes to speak.
Molly Stewart, Morningstar Law Group. Waiting for my slide to come up. There we are. So Abbotswood at Stonehenge is an existing residential community providing assisted and independent senior living. They're just seeking to extend the capacity and the care options available on the site to include memory care. In its existing location, this use provides a moderate density buffer between the single family uses to the east and the office and commercial uses on Creedmoor Road to the west. Sorry, next slide, please. Thank you. So the requested R10 zoning district falls right in the middle of the range that's supported by the future land use map. On top of that, the density is further restricted via a zoning condition that limits that density even further. And the impact of even that limited density will be further reduced by the condition that restricts the site to senior housing, and that reduces trip generation and traffic impacts. I would like to note, since we had a discussion of the buffer, that in addition to the 20 feet that are required, there will be tree conservation area required, and there's certainly nothing about this proposal that requires removal of that buffer. It's simply an item that will come up during the site plan as we're able to more carefully design this site. So as this request represents a modest expansion of an existing use, we thank you for your consideration of our rezoning request.
Thank you. I believe there's no one else signed up to speak on this matter. So I'll bring it to the table for discussion. Any questions or comments from commissioners?
If I may, I do understand we have one more speaker signed up.
Oh, thank you.
Sure.
Hi, good morning. This is Joe Whitehouse. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you. Good morning.
Oh, great. Thank you very much. Good morning, members of the Planning Commission, and thank you for hearing our rezoning request before you today. I'm Joe Whitehouse with Kisco Senior Living. Kisco Senior Living, we have 4 senior housing communities here in the Raleigh area, including this community. Abbotswood at Stonehenge was originally built in 1986 and actually is one of our oldest communities in our portfolio. It is currently comprised of 120 rental units of independent living senior housing. And our rezoning request today is in response to the lack of additional services and facilities we can offer to our residents today. All our communities typically offer assisted living, memory care, and sometimes fully skilled nurse care can be provided. Unfortunately, at Abbotswood, we do not have the facilities to offer these additional services. So today, when our residents age in place and need additional services, we have to work with them and their families to find such services, hopefully available in one of our sister communities here in the area. When space is not available, we have to actually help them find a residency in another community outside of the Kisco community. This move is terribly disruptive to both the resident and their families. The resident has to leave their familiar surroundings, all their friends, and their extended Kisco family. Our desire, as Molly said, is to add a small building on the north end of the residual property to offer a transition for our residents for both assisted living and memory care services. We have been working diligently with our neighbors on making them aware of our intent. Many of our neighbors actually have had families stay here. One of our neighbors has actually stayed here himself. And we've added the conditions before you today to help alleviate the concerns that our neighbors have expressed during our many conversations. I am glad to answer any questions you may have, and thank you again for your consideration and your affirmative vote to advance this forward. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Whitehouse. Any questions or comments from commissioners? Okay. I just wanted to make a note that this type of housing is much, I just wanted to recognize it's a much needed type in Raleigh, and also recognize that providing additional services within the same site is a product that I would support. It took a while to get that out, sorry. Commissioner Miller.
I would support this as well. In addition to this project being consistent with the comprehensive plan policies that are listed in the staff report, this is a particular senior living and in particular expanding into memory care facilities is something that Raleigh, we need more of that in this area. We have in particular to support our aging population, to provide more housing options for and senior care, in particular memory care facilities for our senior community as our community continues to age, instead of having to leave the city and the community and their families that they know so well, which is what a lot of seniors face these days. Expanding this particular industry within the city is something that I'm supportive of.
Thank you, Commissioner Miller. Any further questions or comments from commissioners? Yes, Mr. York.
I caution to ask this, but I just want to confirm it's 85 dwelling units, and they reserve the right for other density bonuses that are allowed under the group housing. I just want to confirm if that density bonus is based on the R10 or based on the condition of 85 units. Just wanted to clarify.
Am I still on the mic?
Yes, you are.
Yes.
Okay. So, David, yes, we would be using the density bonus as allowed under the zoning code today. The current facility makes use of that already. So we're capping the 85 units as the code looks at the zoning. So it would actually be double that in terms of what we were capping at. So if we go to R10 with this particular property, the zoning would allow us to do a little over 200 units exactly, but we're capping that to be 170 units at the max. We currently have the 120 units there today, so we're adding just a small addition on this property.
Thank you. I just wanted to confirm that and get it on the record.
Great. Thank you, David.
Thank you, Commissioner Lampman.
It's okay. I'd like to make a motion.
Great.
Okay, I'd like to make a motion to approve case number Z3320 at 7900 Creedmoor Road. The rezoning request is reasonable and in the public interest because it provides much needed housing for our aging population. It is also consistent with the future land use map and the comprehensive plan.
Second.
Thank you, Commissioner Winters. So we have a motion to approve by Commissioner Lampman and a second by Commissioner Winters. I will now ask Shanita to take a roll call on individual votes, and at the end of the roll call, I will announce the outcome of the vote.
Commissioner Bennett, how do you vote? Excuse me.
Aye.
Commissioner Fox?
Aye.
Commissioner Hicks?
Aye.
Commissioner Lampman?
Aye.
Commissioner Mann?
Aye.
Commissioner McIntosh?
Aye.
Commissioner Miller?
Aye.
Commissioner Winters?
Aye.
Vote is unanimous and it passes.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Okay, so I believe that moves us on to new business. These are requests that have not appeared before the Planning Commission. There are 2 items of new business. The first item is CP 420. This is a request to amend the comprehensive plan, and this is an application filed by an adjacent property owner to modify the street plan. Staff will provide a presentation and we will hear from the applicant as well. Matt Clem will present on behalf of city staff.
Good morning, Planning Commission. This is Matt Clem. Can you hear me?
Yes. We can.
Okay, great. Yeah, so CP 420 is a request to amend the street plan for a planned extension of Morgan Street, as you see on the maps on the right-hand side of the screen. This request will also amend Table T2, new location projects. That is the table is basically a prioritization for capital improvements. Without the map street, there's no need for the city to plan for that improvement on this table, so it'll be removed. The street was also mapped in conjunction with the West Morgan area plan. And so this amendment will also remove any written mention of the extension from that plan. The request is inconsistent with a comprehensive plan. Go on to the next slide, please. So you may ask yourself, haven't we already removed this street from the street plan? Well, the question is, or the answer is partially. CP 1119 was removed or did remove the extension from Wakefield Avenue to Ash Avenue. And it was approved by City Council and recommended for approval by Planning Commission. And so this is the map from that previous decision. If you go on to the next slide, you'll see the question in front of you for CP 420 would remove the remainder of that extension from Wakefield Avenue to Morgan Avenue and realign the street plan with the existing built condition of West Morgan Street. And on to the next slide. And so this is the area, a mix of low and medium and moderate density and commercial uses in the West Morgan Street area. Next slide will show the location of the proposed extension and realignment. So the request again is to remove this planned dashed line. Go on to the next slide. This was prepared by the City of Raleigh Engineering Department based on the previous request of CP 1119 that shows the alignment of the street. If you progress the slide, you'll see this portion was already removed, and so the plan would remain. Yep, there you go. So what we're asking here today is, are you willing to remove the rest of the street? Of course, the street is not built yet. This would be a future condition if the street were left on the map. Next slide. This is a map from the small area plan for area specific guidance for the West Morgan area. You can see the orange line is the proposed street that will be removed from this plan. And there are also some text mentions of the street throughout that plan as well, which would be removed. So the request is inconsistent with the city's policies, basically coordinating land use and transportation. The street was mapped in conjunction with the small area plan, which also mapped increased intensity on the future land use map. So kind of a coordinated land use and transportation planning exercise of calling for more land use intensity in this area and then serving that land use intensity with a gridded street to kind of keep all users moving. And so it is inconsistent with those policies. It's my understanding that the applicant has worked with our transportation staff to look at potential mitigations to these inconsistencies at the time of site plan. What's different about this request with the comprehensive plan amendment is there's no mechanism to offer something similar to a zoning condition where the applicant can say, well, we want to remove the street, but we'll also do these other types of improvements to kind of mitigate the issues that we kind of foresee with this request. And so I think they'll represent that in their remarks. And we have transportation staff to speak to that as well. And I'll take any questions. And again, transportation staff and the applicants are here to help.
Thank you, Mr. Clem. Next, we will hear from David Brown representing the applicant. And the applicant and all those that are in support have 10 minutes to speak.
Good morning, Vice Chair Hicks, members of the Planning Commission. Again, David Brown, land planner and landscape architect. Thank you for your time this morning. I am joined by our team led by Greg Sandroder with Hamilton Merritt, who's going to make a couple of quick remarks in a second. Joe Puckett with Stewart, and Richard Adams with Kimley Horn. I think that Matt has done an excellent job summarizing the case. I would turn this over to Greg just to kick us off for a second, please. If Greg is there.
Can people hear me now?
Yes, we can hear you.
I appreciate that. My mic just turned on. Thank you very much. Ladies and gentlemen of the Planning Commission, thank you very much for hearing our case today. Our high-level view is that when Planning Commission and Council removed the western extension, it really eliminated the need for this road entirely. It's what this road does in its remaining state, it prevents the development of this property because it essentially would take, staff did an excellent job of an overlay of what this road extension could look like. And when one looks at the full right of way, it would actually take about a little over a third of the property. And the city does not, to my knowledge, have funds to build this road section. A 2-acre development would not be able to sustain that cost. And it ends up, in my respectful and humble view, being an extension to nowhere, in that it would just dead end into Wakefield. And so what we plan to do as the applicant, we're requesting this road removal because we do have a project we would like to develop on this property. And we hope to submit, if we're successful in this road removal, to submit that ASR to the city in a few short coming months. And we appreciate your consideration.
Thank you very much.
So we're going to try and be brief. We've had a long meeting, and I'm part of the reason for that, so bear with me, please. But I want to go back in time for a second. The graphic in front of you, there are 2 parcels, the one on the left outlined in yellow and the one in blue. The parcel in yellow, we call that the western portion of West Morgan Street. That portion of the extension was removed from the comprehensive plan in May by the Raleigh City Council. That was a unanimous decision, and it followed the recommendation from this Planning Commission earlier in the spring, also a unanimous recommendation to remove the western portion. During deliberations at the Committee of the Whole, it was brought up, couldn't we just go ahead and vote to take action on the entire extension At that time, the wording of the original petition for the western half did not allow us to take action for the entire. So today what we are looking at is essentially a phase 2 request, talking about from essentially the bend in West Morgan Street to Ash Avenue, to Wakefield Drive, to remove the remaining portion of the extension. We might go to the next slide, please. This is a little bit redundant to what we just saw, but essentially this is straight out of the application. The portions of the extension we are petitioning to remove, and the restoration of the historic alignment shown in blue. Next slide, please. One of the things that we checked before we started this process was looking at block perimeter. This is embedded in our Unified Development Ordinance in Chapter 8. Looking at the measurement of the area formed by the North Carolina Railroad, West Morgan Street, Hillsborough Street, and Ash Avenue, is our determination that all of the blocks as they exist today are conforming for block perimeter. So the road extension doesn't correct an existing problem with block perimeter. Just want to make that point. We may take a long pause and see if you have any questions. Joe and Richard are poised to continue.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Brown. So with that, we'll bring it to the table and allow for any questions or comments from commissioners. Commissioner Lampman.
Just a general comment. I think it makes sense. I mean, I remember this one from the previous case, and I do remember asking if we could just remove the whole thing. So I'm ready to vote.
Okay, thank you. I think I saw Commissioner Miller's hand up and Commissioner Fox's.
Yes, I would remember this project as well when the proposed street plan was going from Wakefield to Ash Avenue as well through the Pullen loft apartments. And I just wanted to make a note. This is a similar issue that we faced in the St. Albans area plan. And what's the impact of putting in a street plan through an existing parcel? And I know that this, even though we're dealing with it pretty swiftly this year, with most of the commissioners being in their first term, this has been an issue for the existing landowners for a long period of time. And just noting that the real impact that it has on these local businesses where, even though, we can change it, and in the past for this first phase of the project and likely for the second phase of the project, we will. It's not without significant expense and time by the landowners to change that. And in the meantime, the real business impacts is that frequently they're not able to obtain financing or develop that area until it is changed. So I just wanted to note for the future when we're facing these similar issues where the land map's going to bisect parcels, the real impact that this can have on the landowners there.
Commissioner Miller. Commissioner Fox, were you next?
Quick question for transportation. You mentioned that there might be some mitigation options that had been discussed with the applicant. Can you tell me what those might be?
I wasn't in those conversations individually, so I think I should let the applicant answer that question.
Yeah, hey, this is Matt. I can clarify. I guess the comments I was making were, I know there have been just some continued conversations about what treatments to the street frontage might come forward with a development plan. And I think there's a lot of room to be creative with bike lanes or restriping or whatever else may come in this area. The street plan does call for a 2-lane divided avenue in this location. And ultimately, if that street plan was built, it would have those amenities. I think also there may be some slides in that and applicant presentation that I saw that just showed some renderings of what may be built there in the future. I don't know if they want to look and go through that or not. I'll leave that to them. But that was just kind of the nature of my comment earlier.
Okay, I'm seeing no further comments. I would like to entertain a motion. Commissioner Lampman? Oh, Commissioner Miller.
Sure, I can make a motion. I'll make a motion to approve CP 420. This is to amend the comprehensive plan. This is reasonable and in the public interest because it supports, let me get the exact language. It supports the development in the surrounding area and provides for other traffic options around to mitigate the impact of removing this from the street plan.
Thank you. Is there a second? I'll second the motion. So we have a motion and a second. Seeing no further discussion, I will ask Shanitha for a roll call. And then at the end of the roll call, I'll announce the outcome of the vote.
I'm sorry. Commissioner Bennett, how do you vote?
Aye.
Commissioner Fox?
Aye.
Commissioner Hicks?
Aye.
Commissioner Lampman?
Aye.
Commissioner Mann?
Aye.
Commissioner McIntosh?
Aye.
Commissioner Miller?
Aye.
Commissioner Winters?
Aye.
Okay, the motion passes. It's unanimous. So before we move on to the next case and the final one of the day, I just want to be aware of the time. It's 11:53. We do have the option to stay until 12:30, at which time RTN will stop streaming, so we must also. So if commissioners would like and staff can stay until 12:30, we can try to hear this case. What is the will of the commission? Do we want to hear this case or defer it?
I think we've been cruising. We're in a good groove right now. Let's keep going.
Okay. Great.
I was going to say, I have a hard stop at 12:15, and I didn't know if there were any other items that we needed to address administratively for scheduling for the future meetings as well before then.
So I would like to address that real quick before we move on to the next case. Let's see. So there was some discussion about in our committee of the whole meeting about possibly adding another meeting for the Downtown South project. And so what I would like to do is we will be looking at scheduling another special meeting, doing that as a special planning commission meeting. We just need a 48-hour notice in order to do that. And so I think as long as we're able to announce that by Thursday's meeting of this week, we should be all set in terms of this timing standpoint. So with that, I believe that staff will send out an email and poll for times and dates that work for most. And then we can set that certainly by Thursday and should be able to make that meeting happen. Okay, so, all right. So on that note, we will move on to Z2120. This is a request to rezone approximately less than 1 acre of land from downtown mixed use, 7 stories, urban limited, to downtown mixed use, 20 stories, urban limited, conditional use. Staff will provide a presentation and we will also hear from the applicant. I believe there is no one else signed up to speak, and Matt Clem will present on behalf of staff.
Hello again, Planning Commission. thanks for the introduction, Chair Hicks. Like you said, the request is rezoned under an acre, and your deadline is December 21st, deadline for action. Next slide. So the predominant zoning in the area is downtown mixed use, or DX, and office mixed use. You can see everything to the east, mostly of Boylan Avenue, is downtown mixed use, with height ranges from 7 to 12 and 20 and 40 as you get closer into the core of the city. And then west of Boylan is kind of a office mixed use transition to the west. Next slide. This is just an aerial overview of the site. You can see downtown to the southeast, Union Station at the bottom of the screen there. The site is less than a 10-minute walk to Union Station, about 0.3 of a mile. Next slide, please. Here's a look looking north on Boylan Avenue at the site. Next slide. Here we are at the intersection of Boylan and Morgan, looking east. Next slide. And looking west on Morgan Street to the site. There are 5 zoning conditions. The first limits that 20-story district to 18 stories. There are prohibitions of certain uses listed there. Requirement that active uses running Morgan Street and Boylan Avenue be accommodated on the ground floor. There are some permitted cladding materials for any new structure built. And then the last condition provides some language about structured parking. The language provided in that condition is essentially exactly the same as what is provided in the city's code. And so that's an outstanding issue. We've highlighted that condition can either be removed or it can be modified to add more specificity to what they're looking to accomplish here, or to make that condition more restrictive than what is otherwise required. So as it stands now, that condition is duplicative precisely with what the code would require. Next slide. So here's our change in zoning entitlement. Increases across the board here. Next slide. Setbacks will be the same because the base zoning district is no different and the frontage is no different. Higher walk score, transit score than the city average. Smaller, more efficient units are permitted in the request. Again, the site is well served by transit. It's less than a 10-minute walk to Union Station, probably a 5-minute bike ride or scooter ride to Union Station from this location. It is served well by some existing transit in the area. Also, Union Station, the second phase of Union Station is planned to be one of the BRT hubs as that service comes online and is programmed into the future. So right now, Union Station is a regional transit hub serving rail transit, but in the near future, it will also serve as a bus rapid transit hub as well. Next slide. Of course, this adds to the housing supply in the area. There are no subsidized units guaranteed via zoning conditions. Again, it's within walking distance of transit and would permit a variety of housing types. This is your future land use map, which would recommend downtown mixed use zoning in this location. So that is consistent with the central business district. This is the urban form map, which identifies the area in the city's downtown and in the core transit area. So the urban frontage requested is consistent with that guidance. Next slide. This is a map from the Downtown West Gateway Plan, which is a small area plan done some years ago. You can see the site highlighted at the top with a little red star. And if you can kind of see, if you can squint and read what the guidance is here, is that 4 to 7 story buildings are recommended by the small area plan here. So the request is inconsistent with the Downtown West Gateway Plan. Next slide. Consistent with the comprehensive plan overall, it's consistent with the future land use map designation and the urban form map designations shown here. Next slide. Consistent with these policies, capitalizing on transit. Well, there you go. These two sets of policies, this basically is downtown as a regional center, encouraging high density development in this area. Again, close to transit and on a complete grid that is downtown street grid. Next slide. Inconsistent with the zoning and mixed-use development policies of that downtown West Gateway plan. So it isn't consistent with those kind of area-specific guidance policies. Next slide. And again, just highlighting that outstanding issue of that condition number 5 that we discussed earlier. So this condition could be modified or removed, I believe. Toby Coleman, the applicant, may speak to that in his presentation, and we've had some conversations about it before this meeting. And so with that, I can take questions, or we can go ahead and hear from others.
Great, thank you. Thank you very much. We will hold questions for the moment. And next we will hear from Toby Coleman representing the applicant. And as a reminder, the applicant and all those in support have 10 minutes to speak.
Hey, good morning. This is Toby Coleman with Smith Anderson. I'm here representing the applicant, Heritage Properties. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Okay, great. Thank you for your time, and thank you all for going past the 12 o'clock hour. We were respectful of time, and obviously we do have a time limit, so we'll watch that too. With me today is Ryan Blair of Heritage Properties, the developer of the project, Richard Adams of Kimley Horn, who did the traffic impact analysis, is here if any traffic questions come up, and I will jump right into it. If you could go to the next slide, please. So Matt did a great job of giving you sort of the overlay. I think most of you are very familiar with this site. It is currently, the restaurant at the corner there is currently Calavera Taqueria. I will always know it in my heart as the Moonlight Pizza building. But that's just me. The property here on the slide is in yellow. And it is across, Heritage Properties has been actively developing in this area. You may be familiar with some of the buildings right there across the street, which are highlighted. One Glenwood is already built, already developed. It's got retail on the first floor. And then they've got an open air plaza, which is really a point of pride for Heritage and really a great feature for downtown and this area, part of downtown. Under construction is Tower 2. Of that development, and they call it the Block 83 development. This proposed rezoning would be the next phase of that. Also part of the Block 83 development is the Origin Hotel development, which is highlighted there. It's on the south side of Morgan Street, next door to this site. I don't know, it's really been it's opened during the pandemic, so it didn't have the greatest opening time, but I understand is doing quite well. If you go to the next slide. As Matt outlined, our ask here is to rezone effectively from a height limit of 7 stories to 18 stories. You know, the way we're doing that under the zoning code is going from DX7 to DX20 with a zoning condition that limits height to 18 stories. If you go to the next slide. So I thought it might be useful, you know, I think Matt did a good job of outlining consistency. We do think this is a project that as does staff, that is consistent with the overall plan for the area. We think it's also worth highlighting, as you probably know, that this is really consistent with the development in the area over the last few years. The map that you got in front of you is a map that just shows it's centered on Union Station there in yellow. And by our map, the building is less than a quarter mile. Yeah, so you know, give or take, you know, 1/20th of a mile from the city's calculations, but about a 5-minute walk to current Union Station. As Matt noted, the Go Triangle just got approval, I think, at the end of last year for what's known as Union Station Phase 2, often known as the Rust Bus Building, which is going to be up to 40 stories. That's highlighted in red just north of the yellow Union Station. So that's just down the block from this parcel. And then also, within a short walking distance is the Dillon, which is, again is the red building just to the east of the yellow Union Station. So you can really see that this is an area that's really developing. I'd like to hand it over briefly to Ryan Blair. He's going to talk a little bit about Heritage, their project, and some of the design things they're really taking into account here.
Thanks, Toby. And I'm going to kind of shift and be brief. I know we have a time limit, but if you don't mind going to the next page. I'm Ryan Blair, the head of development and acquisitions for Heritage Properties. Since 2015, we've assembled just over 13 parcels of land that back in the 1800s used to represent one parcel that was block number 83. So our development over the last 5 years in its name of Block 83 pays a tribute to the history of Raleigh in this specific area. You'll see throughout our urban courtyard and throughout the buildings historical elements such as the Hillsborough Hotel, the former gas station that Dram and Drought used to be in, and then a variety of Block 83 tributes via maps and such in the courtyard. This next project, what we're hoping to accomplish is to continue creating a district and an environment not only for office users of modern times to enjoy, but also for the community at night or during lunch to be able to walk via large sidewalks and enjoy the urban outdoor atmosphere. So all in all, we've got under construction, we finished 1 Glenwood in March of last year. The building is 100% leased. We are under construction with Tower 2, which will be finished in January of this upcoming year. And that is 270,000 square feet. Is currently leased, the majority of it to a company out of Chicago called InvestNet, and the rest is vacant. So the last thing, if you want to go to the next slide, I think we've got some renderings. This is the rendering of Tower 2, which is under construction at the moment. If you've driven by the site, Boylan Avenue is closed at the moment for safety and construction concerns. That's set to open in the beginning of December. Next slide, please. So for this project, we typically like to design a building that doesn't look like anything else in Raleigh. It needs to create an aesthetic appeal that fits into the overall atmosphere and the overall neighborhood. But we don't like to replicate the existing look of our surrounding buildings to create a true urban form. So right here on the screen, you'll see the proposed concept, which is a preliminary design. Gensler is the architect, and they're also the architect of Tower 2. The scale, as you can see to the left, is the Origin Hotel, which is a 7-story hotel. It's a boutique hotel, which is actually leading the downtown occupancy at the moment, despite the pandemic making that only about 25%. It's good to see that it's a well sought after hotel for the demand. And then if you could go to the next slide, which is one of our focuses, we're trying to focus on creating a very walkable atmosphere. So not only in and around the buildings, but for the citizens of Boylan Heights and the citizens on the south side of this development to be able to walk up and enjoy over 50,000 square feet of retail. We have the largest privately held urban courtyard in between the two towers at just over 1/2 of an acre. That was not a requirement of the development ordinance, but rather a kind of desire of ours to create an outdoor area that the community could enjoy. So I'm going to pause and kind of kick it over to questions to try to be respectful of time.
And if I could just jump in, this is Toby Coleman again, a couple just sort of basics. This is the plan here, and the reason that we don't have anything addressing affordable housing is the plan here is for an office tower, as we indicated in some of my emails to you. And so the plan is for this to entirely be office with retail on the ground floor. The parking garage condition that Matt Clem talked about, I'm going to talk about briefly in a second. There's our revised zoning condition. We also sent y'all a copy. This is our attempt to try to address some of the concerns that Matt and the staff have raised about the prior version. What we're trying to do here is basically both prohibit, the UDO currently says you can't have light that comes out of the building from, headlights and other things. A concern that I'm sure you've heard about that we heard from Boylan Heights Neighborhood Association when we met with them last week was just making sure, and I know council's had concerns about, is making sure that the internal lights don't shine out in a way that gives it sort of an industrial look at night. And so this zoning condition is intended to do that, basically, minimizing light, requiring that internal lights be shielded. So this is the proposed our proposed fix for that zoning condition that Matt outlined. Again, just to give you sort of a structural sense of the building that's being envisioned here, the building would be somewhat like the Dillon in that it would have parking internally, or as part of the structure of the building. It would be the first few floors after the first floor. And again, it would be office up top. There is currently no residential planned. We're happy to address any questions that you may have. And thank you for your patience, and thank you for staying to listen.
Thank you. I believe there is no one else signed up to speak on this matter. So I would bring it back to the table for any questions or comments from commissioners. Commissioner Miller.
I think this sounds like a really exciting project in the warehouse district, and that's consistent with our downtown regional centers and the related land use policies. I had a procedural question for this proposed additional condition. Can that be incorporated into a motion today, or would we have to wait until it's in a staff report?
So, as we've discussed in the past, if a condition is proposed during your review, you have two choices. It's not formally part of the case, and it can't be added until the public hearing is scheduled. It cannot be added until the council receives your report. So you can report the case out, voting on the conditions that are in your packet, with a recommendation that the council hold it for 2 weeks before scheduling the public hearing so they can get the revised condition in. Or you can hold it for 2 weeks and get the revised condition in. In general, the impact on the timing of the case in terms of when the public hearing can be held is the same. The only difference is that it gets it off your plate earlier, but you don't have the assurance that the condition is actually there at the time you're voting, because you're just we're making a recommendation that the condition be added at a later date.
Thank you. So in this case, it would likewise not affect the date of the public hearing?
The only way public hearing could be held more quickly would be if the public hearing went forward without adding the condition. But in general, since this case would likely be scheduled for December because of the timing of your report going out, it could still be scheduled for December if the council got it at their second meeting in November instead of their first. So I don't see how it affects the timing of the case unless I'm missing something.
Thank you.
Staff generally feels it's cleaner for it to be held at the commission so that you have the condition at hand at the time you vote.
That makes sense. Does the applicant have a position on, or anything else to add on this timing question?
No. Obviously, we want to get it in front of council as soon as possible, but we tend to, we will obviously go with whatever Ken recommends in terms of timing, and we tend to share his assessment on when it would probably be heard regardless.
Toby, the only thing I would add is from a technical standpoint, I understand that the condition may not be able to be added now, but if the request is to add that condition, then we would absolutely add that no matter the case. We're not the type of developer to say we're going to do something and then not do it. So, I mean, that would be a horrible thing of us to do.
Yeah, I mean, the other thing I would say is just obviously you guys know this as well as we do, that when this gets in front of council, they're going to make darn sure that this is addressed. This has been a concern that council has had and has heard a great much about in connection with some of the already existing buildings. So we anticipate that this will need to be addressed regardless.
Thank you. And I'd like to add, I think it's commendable that you're addressing this issue. It is a problem, and that you seem to be approaching it from a very thoughtful point of view. And so I'm excited to see this and hope that it sets a new standard. And I would say, without further objection or any objection, I would like to recommend we hold this at the table for our next Planning Commission meeting to get that additional condition. And so I thank you very much for working with us on that, and look forward to seeing that condition. So with that, I think that takes us to the next item, which is approval of the minutes. And I would like to entertain a motion to approve the September 8th meeting minutes. Commissioner Miller?
I was actually waving to say I got to take off, but before then, I'll make a motion to approve the minutes on the agenda.
Thank you. I'll second that. And I'll ask Janita for a roll call.
Commissioner Bennett, how do you vote?
Aye.
Commissioner Fox?
Aye.
Commissioner Hicks?
Aye.
Commissioner Lackman?
Aye.
Commissioner Mann?
Aye.
Commissioner McIntosh?
Aye.
Commissioner Miller?
Aye.
Commissioner Winters?
Aye.
Thank you very much. The vote is unanimous and it passes. Now on to the report from the chairperson. Just wanted to make a note that there's a special committee of the whole meeting this Thursday, October 29th at 4 p.m. Additionally, I've talked to staff about another special committee of the whole meeting for next week that we discussed earlier. And an email should go out today polling commissioners for when would be the best time to do that. And now on to report from any members. Okay, seeing none, we move on to the report of the Deputy Planning Director.
Sure. So just quick updates on the council actions. 4 items that you reported out have been scheduled for the public hearing, which is on Wednesday, November 4th, to make room for Election Day. That's C1920 on Fox Road, C2420 on Buffalo Road, C3020 on Departure Drive, and TC1220, the historic subdivision text change. 2 items were approved at the last meeting, Z4819 on St. Albans Drive and TC1419, the site plan plot plan text change that everyone worked so hard on. So that's great to have that approved. 1 item has been referred back to Planning Commission for further discussion. We'll likely need to put this on a meeting coming up in November. It was Z420 on Trailwood Drive. This was a rezoning to R10 general use. There was a desire for some neighborhood folks to speak on that due to some technical issues and late signups. That did not happen. And so the council would like you to deliberate again with the benefit of the neighborhood input. There are a new text change that will be coming your way in the not too distant future, which is some tweaks to the campus zoning district. It's a zoning district that's been in the UDO since it was adopted, but has yet to be used. There's a proposal on the table for a campus zone, and staff has realized there's a need to tweak some of the language in the campus district. And then the Dix Edge area study continues to move forward, and the council approved a community leader group for that study. And that's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay, so the only thing that we have left is upcoming items that was in your packet for you to review. And that concludes this meeting of the Planning Commission. Thank you all for staying a little bit late. Appreciate all the hard work. And we are adjourned.